Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? On the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Approval, Form As on 16 Pinecrest Lane.
Wayne, could you quiet the lamp? Could you request the quiet? Could you request the quiet?
We're having some difficulty up here hearing each other, and we'd appreciate it if you had something to say other than to the meeting, that you'd step outside the room. Appreciate that.
Here, and it is being the policy with a net zero, net effective zero. It's an equal swap from each lot just to make a driveway on one person's property, but the applicants are both here if you'd like to speak to them.
So it looks to me it's where the garage is, they're just moving that line to the left, 29.01, 15.8 feet.
What was the reason?
The driveway was on the neighbor's property, so they're just trying to make the driveway all on one person's property, and they're swapping the land in the back to make up the difference.
Dumb question, when they do something like this, do they put new markers in the ground to know where everything is, or is it just noted on paper?
I think it's just noted on paper.
So they don't replace the property bonds.
No, there's probably no markers there to begin with.
That's a good question.
There's probably not. There's a pin out front, apparently.
Any comments from the board? Someone want to make a motion?
The motion approval not required.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve the plan requiring approval. On the motion, any other comments?
You gotta open that to 10:20. You gotta sign it.
How many you need?
Do you want to sign them now, or you want to sign them after the meeting? Would that be all right? Oh, in a hurry for them.
Up to you.
Can you pick those up tomorrow so we can not hold the
Is that
meeting up?
okay? Okay.
On the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
You're all set. I'll leave them with our concierge downstairs, and you can pick them up. You'll just get this, which is the Mylar you need to record. Thank you. You're welcome.
Zoning Board agenda of May 13th.
Cape Cod lumber, we're going to talk about that tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Going to make a Gulf Station on Brockton Avenue, too.
Yeah, which one is that?
I think that's the one that's where right before the used car lot.
Yeah, be more specific on that stretch.
Yeah.
It's on May 23rd.
Yeah. It's
It's a small one.
near the Dunkin' Donuts. It's the gas
Oh, okay,
station closest to the
I would
Dunkin'.
assume on the corner of Groveland and,
Yeah, gas station closest to the.
I assume.
Because they just changed the one at Adams and North to a branded gas station.
And yet they're ending the Gulf credit cards. And
You're just going through.
Any
No
comments?
comment.
No comment.
No
Going
comments.
through the top things. And then we'll get to the 6 o'clock hearing. Could you skip to 6 o'clock?
Do what?
To 6 o'clock?
The site plan review? One-
Yes.
one of the Site plan review, 662 Adams Street, continued. Is anyone here to speak on that?
That's good.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Ronald Whitney on behalf of the applicant, Robert Sullivan. We've been before you many times, as you all know, and you're well acquainted, I'm sure, with the project. We have recently received, since our last meeting on April 5th, a letter from PMP Associates, your consulting engineer. I'm sure you folks have a copy of that letter. And in the letter, and I'm sure that you folks have read it, but it says, at the present time, it is our opinion that plans, if conditionally approved, would meet the zoning requirements. In addition to the planning board standard approval conditions, it's our recommendation that the board vote to conditionally approve the site plan with the following requirements. And I won't read through those requirements. I'm sure the board has that letter. Mr. Sullivan is attempting to run a business, and the business is the storage of trucks that are used seasonally for snow removal and then stored on the premises at 662 Adams Street. The lot is approximately 24,200 square feet. The requirement in the industrial zone, which is where this is located, is that he have a 20,000 square foot lot. So what he's attempting to do really is to take a use that was non-conforming, that is a residential use in an industrial zone, and make it more conforming, because this use that he proposes, the open lot storage of vehicles, is in fact an allowed use in this zone. So this has been a lengthy process, as the board knows, and Mr. Sullivan has tried to take into account all of the comments and concerns of the board, and to develop a plan through the process of these many meetings that we've had that meets with your approval. In the course of going through the plan, revising the plan on many occasions, the most recent was on April 8th. And I should say that Sean Hardy is here from Hardy Engineering in Weymouth again tonight to address any concerns that the board has with respect to the specifics of the plan. But during the course of this process, we addressed the drainage on the lot. There is a proposed subsurface drainage facility that Mr. Hardy can go into in more detail if the board wishes to hear it, but also fencing, buffer strips, plantings, paving. You may recall that Mr. Sullivan had hoped to use the lot with just a gravel base, and the board had asked that it be paved, and he has accordingly come before you previously on April 5th with a plan that shows paving, planting, buffer strips, and all of the things that the board has requested. So we stand before you tonight after this long, arduous process to ask that you approve the site plan. We believe that it's in keeping with the purpose and intent of the bylaw with respect to the industrial zone and uses which may be put to use in the industrial zone, and that it properly accords a basic screening, if you will, and complements the industrial use next to it, and takes into consideration some of the, if not all, of the concerns that have been raised by the board and by neighbors that are here tonight again. And so I would just ask that the board consider approval of the project And certainly, we're here, myself, Mr. Sullivan, and Mr. Hardy, to answer any questions that the board might have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does the board have any comments? Yes.
Can you specify what's changed on, I assume this is the plan, what's changed since our last meeting, last month?
Yeah, the concern was the coverage of loam on all of the buffer strips. And what's changed is the notation that all of the buffer strips will have at least 4 inches of loam.
All right, so the main thing that's changed is the depth of the loam?
Yeah, Sean Hardy, engineer with Hardy and Man Design Group. The specified at the request of peer review, all loom's supposed to be 4 inches deep. We added the note number 10 requiring a new site plan submission prior to using the building, and we also extended the landscape buffer down, further down the driveway.
Okay. So there's no other, is the fence a 6-foot fence, or is it an 8-foot fence, or what's the story with the fence? The stockade fence?
The existing fence is to remain, what is it? It's an 8-foot fence.
Do we allow an 8-foot fence? With a permit? Have you applied for a permit?
Yes.
He has, okay. Both myself and Mr. Rangel at the last meeting had talked about the buffer between the property and the neighbor and whether it was sufficient, and I think both of us said it wasn't, in our opinion. I'm curious, because we have town council here, if I could ask Amy a question. There's a rule in our books about the buffer between a commercial industrial use and the residential property next door. And there's, I think, 3 allowed solutions. Does this sound familiar?
Yes, 67?
Yep.
66? Yeah, 66.
So I guess my question for you is, does the proponent in a situation like this get to pick which one they prefer? Or is the preference left to the planning board?
So I think the choice would be the applicant's. However, there's a lot of discretion on the part of the planning board. So for example, I'm not sure I see 3. I see 2 options.
Okay.
I see a buffer strip of at least 20 feet in width. And then there's the detail as to what that has, what that has to consist of. And then there's the solid screen types fence, 6 feet in height, complemented by suitable planting. So that's where I think there's the discretion of the planning board. If they choose the fence, the planning board determines their discretion as to what is complemented, what are suitable plantings that will complement the fence.
Thank you.
Just in regards to that buffer strip, and this may be, I'm not sure, Sean, if this was an addition on April 8th plan, but you'll note behind the residence next door, there is noted 4-foot arborvitaes of a green giant brand, and those grow to 30 feet tall. They'll grow 8 to 10 feet wide. So the suggestion would be that that's going to provide quite a buffer between the 2 properties.
Does it run along the entire border between the commercial property and the residential property?
Well, it runs along the back and then it goes down the side. I don't believe it goes down the side.
But it doesn't go the entire way?
Not all the way down to the rear lot line.
Sight line, Rick.
What?
So you need sight line.
No, all the way down the backyard.
Oh, no.
All right.
No,
Why
you can see
was-
it- You can see it on the plan. It runs down from Plymouth Street. It runs down halfway down that and then across the back of the house.
I mean, the majority of the activity is going to be in that back section of the lot, which abuts a residential backyard.
That's where
Why
the
isn't there any
8-foot
screening
fence
there?
is.
What?
That's where the 8-foot fence is. Yeah.
I don't understand. The back lot line has a berm, which I think is the leftover fill that was removed illegally.
Yep.
I don't see anything on here about how that'll be treated. Are you just leaving it as a pile?
That's the proposal, yes.
All right. Do we have anything on the books about whether or not a berm can be on a, split on a lot line, or does it need to be all self-contained on the property?
Okay, I'm gonna put you back.
Anybody? I mean, right now, the pile, the berm sits on the lot line. A couple feet of it is on their property, and the rest of it's on the bordering property. Is that an allowed feature?
I don't see why not. Don't.
Whose pile is it?
Oh, that's a great question.
Isn't this person that has the majority of the pile supposed to be doing a fill permit?
Yes. So
That
part of it
berm-
is the applicants, and part of it is a butter.
That berm was created with the consent of the abutter, the two parties, Mr. Sullivan and the abutter, in the industrial use to the north of the property, created that berm.
Is there a treatment proposed for that? There's no treatment proposed for that. It's just a pile.
On our side, it's proposed lumen seed.
Okay. Is that on here?
Yeah, it's shaded in there. That area on Mr. Sullivan's property is all proposed to be loomed and seeded.
Okay. Is this a second driveway on the north edge of the property?
No.
That exists, it was installed as a gravel driveway. It's proposed to be converted back to lumen seed.
Okay. In terms of operations, is there any repair work going to go on there?
Mr. Sullivan?
Minor. Define minor? You're changing a light bulb or changing oil?
Change the light bulb, I've done electrical work of racing it so I could get the truck stickered again. So that was being done. And right now, the truck is being repaired so for a conveyor chain on the bed, so that it can be used to do this work that's gonna need to be done.
Any fluids, oils?
As a rule, they're sent out.
Okay. All right, that's all for the moment from me.
We have Mike Peralta on the phone, too. Are there any comments from Mike?
Do you have any comments? Mike? Mike? I think we lost him again.
I guess we lost him again on the phone, but I'm sure he'll be on a little later on. Any other comments from the board? Yes,
There was I think in one of these hearings, there was talk about seeing grease or oil stains on the yard, and the gentleman has said that you're doing some electrical and stuff like that.
We
But,
must have got lost again. Do you have any comments?
because that concern was raised, you planning on doing any oil changes, any fluids going in the ground? or
Do you have any
anything?
comments for the board? Okay.
Is that a question?
Yeah, that's a
Was
question.
that directed to me or?
Yeah, it was directed to you, sir.
Okay, I can't hear you.
Okay, in one of these meetings, there was a concern, there had been oil stains or something like that. People had said they'd seen oil stains on the ground. Are you planning on, doing any oil changes or hydraulic fluids or anything like that?
As a rule, no.
Okay.
As a rule, things are sent out. I have 3 or 4
I
different
will let them
facilities
know
that
that.
do the repairs. Some things are done in-house, most of it's sent out.
Okay, I mean, that was a question that was raised. I just wanted to get your response on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike said that they've responded to his concerns. The only two things that were left were the report from town council and the building commissioner, the dimensional buffer, and the frontage questions. So,
And they have been addressed or they haven't been
they
addressed?
have not, that's why they're here tonight.
Okay, can you address those?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Yeah.
Can you guys take those out, please? I'm sorry, the chairs were set up for 6 feet apart.
I'm sorry.
So
Liz,
repeat
I
the
didn't
question,
hear
Liz.
Mike's concern.
So Mike said everything was all set except for the report from town council and the building commissioner about the frontage and the dimensional buffer.
The
So I
fir-
guess that's what we're waiting for.
The current lot is grandfathered. Residential use was, I think, off the top of my head, inadequate, 73 feet of frontage, I believe. At any rate, it's grandfathered, the frontage, in my opinion, and the residential use. And the applicant intends to attempt to have site plan approval for the industrial use, and if that is approved by planning, at that point, the existing structure can no longer be used for residential use, and the 73-foot frontage is grandfathered frontage. The residential use would be abandoned at the time the industrial takes over. And in terms of the buffer, I think that's already been answered.
Thank you, Marshall.
Sure.
And I would point out to the board on the plan that's dated most recently revised on April 8th, there is a notation that makes the applicant aware, and anybody who looks at the plan, that any future use of the building on the site will require either site plan approval and/or a variance from the ZBA.
But it would seem to be that it would not be used for residential.
Well, he doesn't, at this point, he hasn't made a determination as to what, if any, approval he might seek for that building. He hasn't ruled out anything, but he hasn't got a solid plan in place for use of the building.
It can't be used for residential. You cannot have an industrial use accessory to a residential use. When this board approves that industrial plan and site plan, at that point, the structure can no longer be occupied as a residence. It can only be used as a commercial use. It's nobody's choice. If he wants to use it for something that's not allowed in residential, in commercial, the industrial, he would have to seek some type of relief depending on what he wanted to do. The tenant's out. I understand, I think he has an employee in there temporarily until if this works out, whatever for him. I think that's what's the intent.
Thank
How
you.
it happened. I believe there has been some discrepancy or misunderstanding with regards to the order that was issued by the select board, the cease and desist, which said it prohibited both the industrial, anything going on industrial and pending a site plan, as well as the residential use. And I think it was misinterpreted. If the industrial use is no longer continuing illegally or unpermitted by this board, at that point, the residential can no longer be used. He still has the trucks there, and there's still stuff going on. At that point, nobody can be living in the house. And it's supposed to be prohibited to have the industrial continue. But now the industrial has ceased. There's nothing going on up there pertaining to that. For inspections we've done up there, there's a truck up there or something like that, but there's nothing going on. And there is somebody, I believe one of his employees is what I was understanding, but it doesn't matter, living in the unit, which continues to be grandfathered residential until you approve the industrial.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question, the building inspector?
Yes.
So, in your opinion, they've been abiding by the cease and desist?
They took longer than I would have liked to have seen the trucks move out because, but winter was pending and we knew it was going to happen. To try and do something else or force it, it just wasn't going to happen, in my opinion. There would be money wasted by the town to try and attempt in a COVID court to get it, that's so far behind, to get a TRO in something that wasn't It was distressing to a neighbor, but it wasn't dangerous. And 662 did get the equipment out of there, and it hasn't returned.
Are they, as part of a cease and desist, can they repair vehicles?
Excuse me?
As part of a cease and desist, are they allowed to repair vehicles on site?
Much as you would in an R40 zone. You know, if you had something you wanted to repair in your backyard, could you repair something? Yeah.
So the cease and desist was the industrial use, not the residential use?
Right now, it's a residential use.
Okay, so,
Whatever's allowed in residential use, can you work on your car, in your driveway, or in your backyard, yeah, or your truck? Yeah, if it's foreseen to be part of a commercial or industrial use and it's part of a business, I'd have to say no.
okay. All right.
Are there any comments from the,
If I may.
you surely,
Thank you.
please, Amy.
Thank you. Amy Questle, Town Council. On the buffer strip, I'm not certain that, that's done, because as I pointed out earlier, you know, they have an option, but one of the options that they appear to have taken is the fence. But the fence has to have a complement of vegetation. And as it was pointed out earlier, the fence, there's a very large section of the fence that does not have a complement of vegetation. Now, I think that the applicant's argument is that that section of fence does not necessarily abut this neighboring residential use. However, it does. And so I don't think that the vegetation has to be the same, but it does say that there has to be complemented by vegetation. So they have to have something there, I think, to be able to meet that section of 66. And then the only other point that I found out just now is that this whole thing about repairing vehicles, the building commissioner has a point that if this was a repair business, it wouldn't be allowed on the property. As you know, the zoning bylaw only allows the repair of large commercial trucks in an indoor facility. However, it's concerning that the applicant is stating that some stuff will be done in-house and some stuff will not. I think we need a very good idea as to what exactly will be done on the premises and what you're comfortable with allowing on the premises that is associated with the storage, the temporary storage of registered vehicles, because that is the use that they have applied under. So under H2, they've applied under the temporary storage of commercial registered trucks and trailers. So, you know, I think if you guys figure out what you think is appropriate for in-house repairs should be written down in a decision so that there can be no confusion later.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the neighbors or the residents? Yes, ma'am. Please take the microphone.
Hi, Michelle Kearney, 652 Adams Street. I just have a question about the buffer strips. Well, I have a couple, actually. Why they're 11 feet and not 20 feet wide? And also, how are trees going to grow in 4 inches of loam on top of however many feet of the processed gravel, on top of the trenches that are a few feet deep, like filled in with regular gravel and cement and other things used to put up the fence? I don't understand how they're gonna grow and thrive, and it's the property owner's responsibility to maintain them. So, I mean, are there any like assurances we can have that they will be maintained, or what happens if or when the trees die? Like, do we have to come back in front of the board? How does that work?
Well, they would be required to replace them if they died. And as far as the material in the ground, obviously, if it wasn't prepared properly and they did die, they'd have to make it so that they wouldn't die. The issue that you talked about on the 20-foot, and that was, we discussed that quite a bit at the last meeting, that the way the bylaw reads, when you read it, it can get confusing, but it does says or fence, so,
It says at least 20 feet in width, a buffer strip of at least 20 feet in width shall be reserved, and screening shall be provided in the form of, and then it goes on, and that's where you have the 6-foot fence complemented by suitable planting, so I don't understand why it wouldn't be 20 feet.
It's one or the other. It's
Yes.
four, is what it says.
It actually says 20 feet in width and screening.
but then it says or fence.
No,
No, screening in the form of.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
You can sit down,
I mean-
Patrick, and we'll.
I have it right here, and it's or a the last part of it is or a solid screen-type fence, 6 feet in height, complemented by suitable plantings. But that's after it says the 20 feet,
I
and then it
underst-
goes on to say the screening, so I don't understand why it's 11, I don't know where that number came from.
That's what's in the rules and regulations, and Amy probably could give you a better answer than I can. But
Because, I mean, in
that's-
her cease and desist, that was one of the main things she said, that any site plan should comply with 17566A, which is the 20 feet in width with suitable screening.
Or,
Yeah, that's the last part. There's several descriptions
But it's
of the
all
screening and
you
the,
have two choices.
no, I don't understand that.
Yes. And in terms of maintenance, 17566E says that the owner will be required to maintain the buffer strip.
Right, but
Clean and
it,
safe manner, and the plantings die, they have to take care of it.
I mean, yeah,
That's in terms of the maintenance.
but I'm still confused as to why we don't get the 20 feet. I know you have the or, and I know that's the last part of that specific section. Could,
I don't know how.
Because they choose not to. They don't want to, so they haven't proposed it. It's as simple as that.
Have a drink of water, or
So, if I may.
I'm
Sure,
sorry,
please.
excuse me, what was that, Marshall?
you can have a drink of water, or you could have a.
So, I mean, you
soda.
could,
You could have one or the other.
you could have a natural growth of trees in thick planting if they're existing, or a double row of evergreen trees, or a solid type fence, 6 feet in height, complemented by suitable planting. That's with the 20 feet, though.
I can't argue, I don't know how to, that's not the way to interpret it.
Amy?
So if I may, the buffer, I think that in this instance, the buffer strip, and the bylaw calls it a buffer strip in A, and it calls it a buffer zone down further. I think that's when you have a undeveloped property that is going to be developed, meaning you cannot have anything, you cannot put a building, you can't put anything within the 20 feet. So there's a buffer strip of 20 feet. It doesn't mean that it has to be completely planted with trees. That,
But it should be at least 20 feet wide of nothing there?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's my main point, is
Okay.
that we need the 20 feet, not 11.
Right, except for the fact that this is a developed property.
But if they had gone through the right process, we would have gone through this in the beginning, and it should have been reserved, and,
Well, there's areas where it just can't be, it cannot be done because of the dwelling that's there. So there's pre-existing structure. There's a pre-existing structure on the property, and I think it says it's exactly 20, I think, is what that says. I only have a very small.
I'm not talking about the driveway, I'm talking about the other two.
Right, so they're not showing any structures there.
So shouldn't it be 20 feet?
Oh, thank you. It doesn't have, it doesn't say that the 20-foot buffer strip does not, it says a buffer strip of at least 20 feet in width.
Along
Okay.
all lot lines adjoining the residential.
Right, but it doesn't say that the buffer strip has to be loamed and seeded,
Oh,
grass,
that's fine,
planted.
but there can't be anything in those 20 feet,
And I
correct?
don't see that they're showing anything.
Well, if you had seen pictures, it would show plows, equipment,
Oh,
a
yeah, yeah, and
dumpster,
that's previous. I don't think that they shouldn't be able to do that now.
within 20 feet of those lot lines, right?
Yeah, they don't show any structures.
N-
Everything
No,
that
I'm
shows
talking
is-
about equipment and dumpsters
yeah.
and trash and,
So this is what I have.
Mhm.
No, this isn't what I have, this is a bit different. But this, so this was one of the questions that I had for the planning board, is that, it says there's, proposed bituminous concrete area for open lot temporary truck storage. And so will any decision allowing this, this use limit that to temporary truck storage? Because in the pictures that I've seen, there was also equipment storage. So I apologize that I haven't been at previous meetings. You might have already gone over that. But, you know, there has to be, if that's the use, that's the use. So they can't necessarily be storing things, you know,
And that-
piles and
Right, and that's
things
a
that I
dri-
saw in pictures.
Right, and that's a driveway where the particular spot you're talking about.
no,
is-
no, okay, so there's the driveway, you know how it goes like like that, there's the driveway and it goes over and down, the trees stop in this corner? Not the driveway, but the first trees and then the other lot line, those should be at least 20 feet with nothing there, if not plantings, correct?
There should just be nothing there, and they're not, unfortunately, they're not showing anything there. I see what you're saying, how they have this 11-foot wide, deep loam and seed buffer.
4 inches of loam, which I don't understand how the trees are gonna grow in 4 inches of loam.
That's the normal procedure in most landscape projects that's set up.
But does that mean they have to dig out the processed gravel that's there already,
Well, they're
or
supposed to have they're supposed to have that many inches of loam, period.
on top of the gravel pavement?
Well, it would be.
So how are they gonna grow?
We're probably about to make them plant something in that area also.
Yeah, we very well may. We haven't got to that point yet.
In order for an arborvitae to grow, it needs to have some sort of depth to it.
So I'll let you go unless we need to.
I mean, 4
Well, it's
inches
not less
on,
than 4 inches, so that's how it's done.
I
But
understand,
Wayne, does trees grow in processed gravel?
that, yeah, exactly.
In some situations, it does. I mean, pine trees grow fairly well in gravel, I guess, but obviously, that's not what it says. And normally if you're gonna plant some plant material, you better make sure it lives, otherwise you're gonna keep replacing it. So
Right.
in most cases, people will put more than 4 inches of loam.
And I think with Amy's comment, they're probably, I'm not gonna speak for them, but they're gonna plant something there other than grass.
Come again?
I said with Amy's comment earlier, they need to plant something there in the back other than grass. I assume probably carry these arborvitaes down that lot line.
Yeah, I would
I would
probably
assume. Not gonna
suggest that
speak.
we specify that.
The other one is 4.5.
That's 20 feet from that, and that's 11. So, Mr. Chairman, there
Yes.
seems to be or maybe it could be me, or there's a plan discrepancy, but it says proposed 11-foot wide landscape, deep loam seed buffer, and it's pointing to the rear of the property and the side of the property, but there's no way that one of these is 11 and the other one's 11. They're, just by my eyesight, they're
Right.
different.
That's correct.
So, yeah. So that can't be, that should change, because
Sean, maybe you could address that, Sean. I guess in the wording, it says 11 feet, but in reality, when you look at the back of the plan, you know that shaded
Yeah, I
area.
was trying to restore the hill for erosion control, and I'm 11 feet off the bottom of the hill.
I couldn't hear you, what?
It's 11 feet off the bottom of the hill, and then we're also restoring the slope.
Right.
In the back.
Yeah.
In the back.
Lumen seed the hill on our property, but there's the 11 foot at the base of the hill.
It's not.
No,
It's definitely not 11 feet from here to here. It's not, I mean.
right, it's more than 11 feet.
But
Right.
also, yeah, exactly,
Right.
because the berm is not straight, so we can't have an error on the plan that says 11 feet if it's not 11 feet. I would just say, I would call it 20 feet. I think it's 20, from the scale, it's
Right.
close to 20 feet in the rear.
Do you understand that, Sean? I can show it to you on this.
I do understand, yeah.
Right. So it's just that it points and it suggests that it's 11 feet, but it's more than 11 feet.
Okay, yeah.
It says proposed 11-foot wide landscape, 4-inch deep loam and seed buffer. But in reality, if you put a ruler to it, you would obviously see that
It's more than that,
it's
yeah.
more than,
So I could write minimum?
please?
I could write minimum?
Well, I mean, you really suggested shaded area is all done around there, so I would presume that it would be what it shows on the plan rather than what the figure says. Rather than it being 11 feet, it's what it shows on the plan.
Yeah.
You follow me?
I do.
It's just that if the arrow wasn't put to that, no one would probably pick up on it, but the arrow does point to that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Can you speak into the microphone so they can hear you at
Sorry.
home? Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that we're all clear about the 20 feet with nothing in it along our adjoining lot lines, at least the driveway's 10 feet and then the other two are 20.
Well, it's going to, right now, it's as it shows on the plan,
Which says 11 feet.
which is 11 feet on the side, all the way to the back. And in the back, it would, it looks more like 20 feet or something like that.
But we're not in the back where the owl with the trees.
There are no trees on there presently. I think the board, from what I've been listening to, will require to have some, perhaps have some landscaping there in addition to the grass.
Aren't the circles trees?
Please?
Aren't the circles trees?
Aren't there what?
Aren't the circles?
Yes, those are trees, but your question, I thought, was that you wanted trees to go where the trees end to the back
Down
of the
the back.
property, on your side. And
Correct.
I think the board is going to probably make, I don't know, but it seemed from the talk we talked that there might be something to that.
Okay, and then, yeah, just the other thing was the 20 feet.
Right, and I think we've answered that question. I know you don't agree with it, but I think
I
we've
thought,
answered.
I thought it was 20 feet, nothing in it along our lines.
No, not the way we read the bylaws.
Isn't that what you said, ma'am?
So I'm sorry if I'm not being clear. There can be no structures within 20 feet because there is a buffer strip. They have no structures within 20 feet, no new proposed structures within 20 feet of your lot line. Now,
Okay.
if they are to store equipment there, as some of the pictures have shown, which I think is another question also, that, you know, does that fall into this use? I don't think they would be able to store that equipment within the 20 feet. It has to remain a buffer strip. However, the use of this, that I have been told, will be temporary truck storage. So therefore, if something is within the 20-foot buffer strip, they could simply just move it.
Okay,
Because there's no structure that they're proposing within that. So if this board, if they had come in with a garage and they wanted to put that garage, say, 11 or 19 feet, this board would say, no, there has to be a 20-foot buffer strip. But it doesn't mean it has to be planted, loamed, seeded, nothing.
So, in other words, you're saying the trucks can be parked right up against the fence, like,
No.
so
No,
there has to be
That's what I'm saying, they can't be.
20 feet of nothing?
It should be,
Okay, that's it. That's all I want.
but it doesn't have to be planted.
That's fine, as long as 20 feet of nothing.
Right, the fence and the 11-foot planting strip is what it is.
That's the screening.
That's the screening. It's not a buffer, that's part of the buffer strip. And we are probably gonna make them put plantings down there other than grass down the residential lot line.
And it does show on the plan that the plantings are on the 662 side,
Yes.
just so you're aware of that.
Oh, I know, but
Right,
it just,
right.
it's, yeah, it's just,
But there's nothing going down back.
Not all of
right
it.
at the moment.
yeah.
Right. But most, since that, it appears the fence is on the lot line, so I think any plantings down there would also be on 662, not on your side.
Right. Unless you choose to plant something.
Yeah. Unless-
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask two questions?
Yes, sir.
The first is the chamber where everything drains into. Where does it drain out, or does it just leach directly downward?
It infiltrates down, there's no outlet.
Okay,
It's sized to hold a 100-year storm.
okay. My other, well, actually, I got two other questions, I apologize. Does this need permitting or licensing through the Board of Selectmen for open lot storage? Do we know that?
I don't know,
I
I'm
don't
not
think
aware of
so.
that.
It's a logo, right? Okay. Is there a cap on how many vehicles can be stored at any one time?
Only what you does.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to ask the applicant then, how many vehicles they intend to store on the property?
I can tell you how many I own at the moment.
Could you speak into the, up here, please?
I own over a dozen at the moment.
Okay.
They're not all there, so, I mean, it's hard to say, put a number to that.
Okay. Do you need the entire space to store 12 vehicles? I don't know how big they are.
Yeah?
You do? Okay. They're fitted in there tightly when they're all in there?
Yeah?
Okay. Thank you.
Patrick, you had a question?
Hi, Pat Kearney, 652 Adams Street. I got a question for the building inspector. There's a cease and desist from Inspectional Services dated May 19th. That was issued by you, it's got your signature?
What is it?
Is a cease and desist from you?
There is one, I believe.
It's got your signature on it, so I would assume it is.
Yeah, well, it has my signature on it, it is. Hold on, I probably have it here.
And to Mr. Collins' question, Mr. Collins, you asked if you need a permit for an 8-foot fence, you can put an 8-foot fence up with a permit. Fence is 10 feet tall on my side.
I'm sorry?
The fence is 10 feet tall on my side. Okay, so,
Yeah, I have one here that I issued on May 19th,
okay,
yeah?
my question would be, we were requesting the street file pretty much on a bi-weekly basis during this whole process. And it wasn't in there till December, and it's dated May 19th. And there's no receive stamp from the town clerk on the document. So was it filed on May 19th, or was it filed sometime in December?
This cease and desist,
Yes,
I believe I have
date's right up the top
a
there.
stamped copy of it. This is just one I ran off that actually was run up for me, but, yeah, we have one.
Okay, so you issued a cease and desist on May 19th.
By, my guess is it was delivered by sheriff, because we don't mail them anymore.
Well,
I don't usually, cease and desist is probably 60.
What I'm saying is, every other document,
Mail to both addresses.
what I'm saying is, I'm not questioning whether the applicant got it, but every other document in the street file has a receive stamp on it, but that one did not. But that's fine. You issued a cease and desist on May 19th, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then you issued a building permit for the fence in June, Is it like regular procedure to issue a building permit to somebody that's already under a cease and desist?
He did cease and desist.
He did not.
I
Would you like to see,
believe,
would you
and
like to
then
see the
we
pictures, sir?
issued a permit for a fence that I think was already up, to be honest with you.
Correct, it was.
He put it up without a,
Correct, it was.
without a permit.
Andy
What I
falsified the
heard.
permit, said he put it up by himself, but he hired a landscaper.
Well, I don't know who did
Okay.
it, but,
Okay.
he did it, and we issued a permit to put up a fence and.
While under a cease and
Well,
desist.
excuse me, let Marshall finish the sentence before you
sorry.
interrupt.
Yes, I guess we did. Cease and desist with regards to continuance, enlargement, and open lot storage, and ask them to move all the trucks out. It's in the best interest, I thought, of everybody to allow them to put the fence up.
And-
Because
and-
that's what's gonna be allowed for the buffer strip, in my opinion.
Well, the buffer strip's a 20-foot strip with the fence,
Well, I
but we, that's,
disagree with you.
that's water under the bridge at
Okay.
this point. Okay, so you also said tonight that it appears that there's a resident in the house.
I think so.
Okay, at the Board of Selectmen meeting, I was informed by the town manager that you had reported to him that all the vehicles are removed and there's nobody living in the house.
No, that's not the report I gave. I said that
Is,
it appears there is no activity, illegal activity up there with regards to the trucking and the trucks, et cetera. There was no mention of anybody living in the house. Somebody is allowed to live in the house where there is
As
no
lo-
activity going on.
as long as the operation's not taking place, correct?
As long as he's not doing, yes.
Well, I've beat this fact to a pulp. He has not stopped his operation yet, not yet. And you've got the emails from me to prove it.
We looked at it and
Mr.
we
Chairman,
saw no activity.
this has nothing to do with the site plan.
You know.
Basically, the point I'm making is we shouldn't even be at this point.
Well, we are.
We shouldn't have come this far.
Well, we are, and we're trying to solve the problem.
Yeah, okay. So, Mr. Whitney also got up and he started speaking to all the town and zoning bylaws that this property abides by, basically admitting that he needs to abide by the new zoning bylaws, where he's changing the use of the property, which would include the 90 feet frontage.
I think that's been explained, Patrick.
I'll let my attorney speak to that. He's a little
That's
bit more
fine.
well-schooled than I am.
If he wants to speak
Yeah.
to it, have him speak to it.
Evening, Chair and members. My name is Attorney Donald Nagel, and I represent the Kearneys at 652 Adams Street. And, you know, I have to say the conversation thus far, you know, has been a little bit of not seeing the forest through the trees. You know, there's a debate about the buffer and what the language of the bylaw says. And what we're doing here is reviewing a site plan review application from an applicant that's in violation of 4 separate enforcement orders, stop work orders.
Say that again,
And
please.
to my knowledge, none of them have been complied with. So I think we just got to put this in perspective. The other thing is, there's 2 different competing uses going on a single property. It's a grandfathered residential lot that is now being used for residential and for commercial at the same time.
We've addressed that.
Well, it's still going on.
We addressed
And
it.
it was, you know, a stop work order was issued, but it's still going on. So I don't understand that. But speaking of forest through the trees, I just want to put that in perspective. We're dealing with an applicant that went ahead and conducted a commercial activity on a lot that was used since, you know, prior to the zoning laws for residential use. Now he's changing the use without getting any prior approvals from the town, any, and continues to be in violation of 4 stop work orders issued by, not just this board, but issued by other entities of the town. So put that in perspective when we're talking about what kind of buffer you want to require under this approval when this operation is going on right next to residential properties. And from what I am gathering The language of the bylaw is not clear. Let's just admit it. It's not clear. We can all pull out our own interpretations of that buffer bylaw. But under circumstances where we have clearly a violator who is submitting an application for an approval before the very board that issued an enforcement order for which it hasn't been complied with, and we're talking about, well, should we require a 20-foot buffer or not? Of course you should require a 20-foot buffer. And it should be fully vegetated. And the vegetation should be required to be monitored by a third party to make sure it grows and it's intact. You can't put a buffer, you can't put vegetation in a compact gravel. Come on. You just can't do that. Let's be real here. And furthermore, I don't even know why we're talking about 20-foot buffers anyway. This is a proposed industrial use, commercial use, in an industrial zone. That's a change of use from residential. The reason why it's residential is it's a grandfathered use. It's an undersized lot. Once that use is changed, the grandfathering protection goes away entirely. And for this commercial use, the dimensional standards under the bylaw apply. And they don't comply. The bylaw requires 90 feet of frontage, and the width is 90 feet. They don't comply with either of those. And this board, with all respect, is not empowered to waive or vary that requirement. And I would submit that no board is authorized to issue a variance for those dimensional standards. So I don't know why we're here to begin with, to echo my client's comment. This is not an allowed use because the lot is undersized. It doesn't comply with the dimensional standards of the bylaw. So I would recommend, under those, I would ask the board to consider suspending this site plan review application until there is a ruling by town council or the zoning board of appeals as to whether or not that dimensional requirement applies and whether it can be waived or a variance could be issued for it. So otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels before the site plan. Because I am absolutely certain that this proposal does not comply with the zoning bylaws, and that this board, or any board in town, has the authority to grant a variance from that requirement. The current use as a residence is a grandfathered use. But he's changing that use. He's changing it to a commercial use. So the current bylaw, all of it, applies. And he doesn't meet it. The dimensional specifications of the lot are not met by the bylaw. And for that reason, I would request this board to either suspend this deliberation until either town council or the Board of Appeals addresses the issue of compliance with zoning with regard to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. We have town council here this evening, and we've been over this on too many nights, and this is the point where we're at right now. Amy?
Sure. So I don't necessarily agree with Attorney Nagel on some of his points. First of all, the Zoning Board of Appeals under the bylaw has the power to grant variances, dimensional and use variances in Abington. So there is a board that could do that. However, I'm not necessarily, I don't necessarily agree with him that that needs to be done in this instance. The Attorney Nagel submitted a letter with citing 2 cases. In my opinion, neither case are applicable. They both have to do with extending non-conforming structures. That's not the case here. Here we have a conforming use that will go onto a non-conforming lot. Your bylaw appears to be a bit more permissive when it comes to conforming uses. For example, in 175-72, for a change of use, when you have one non-conforming use going to a different non-conforming use, there has to be a finding that that's not more detrimental, and that extension, it does not exacerbate the non-conformity. However, when you're going from a non-conforming use to a conforming use, that is not required. So your bylaw tends to be more permissive towards conforming uses. I found no case law at all supporting Attorney Nagel's position that a lot that is currently developed, that's what we have to remember, is that this lot is currently developed and has been used, whether it's been used by something that's a non-conforming use or a conforming use, it is developed, it has been used. And therefore, you know, common sense would dictate that that lot should be able to be used for a conforming use, not necessarily for another non-conforming use, but for a conforming use. And then I also wanted to clear up the fact that most definitely there cannot be 2 principal uses on this property. So they either have to determine if they're going to use it for a non-conforming residential use, or if they're going to use it in this industrial use that's allowed in the industrial zone. But they cannot have both at the same time. My letter of October 26th clearly contemplated the fact, it says that there's a non-conforming single-family use and is being changed to a use consisting of truck equipment storage pursuant to the Town of Abington zoning bylaw. Therefore, the pre-existing non-conforming residential use must cease pursuant to the bylaw. So, again, if this does change to an industrial use, that pre-existing non-conforming use of the residential has to change. Has to be eliminated.
Right.
They cannot have both.
Right. Thank you, Amy. Yes, sir.
Can I just briefly respond? I think that your town council and I disagree on a really basic issue here as to whether or not a new proposal to conduct a commercial use in a zone that meets the zoning requirements can proceed when the dimensional requirements in the industrial zone are not met by the law. I did cite a couple of cases in the letter I sent to town council. Those do in fact support my proposition, although they do deal with buildings and not uses per se. But the point remains, and there's a slew of other cases that also reinforce this point. I brought a copy of one here that I could give to town council to review. I would request that it's from the land court called Reska versus Duca, and it basically addresses a situation where an existing garage that was used for commercial purposes was proposed to be used to be basically knocked down and built for a residence. And the lot did not meet the dimensional standards for a residential district. The commercial building, the commercial garage, was a pre-existing non-conforming use, just as this residence is a pre-existing non-conforming use. And in this Reska case, the court examined whether or not the applicant could get approval to knock down the commercial garage and build a residence. Guess what? They said no. Why? Because it didn't meet the residential dimensional standards for a conforming use. And if I may, I'd like to submit a copy of this to town council.
But again, thank you. Oh, yeah, I do have this.
So
But again-
I would ask this board to pause and consider whether or not this really is something that the board can approve, even with the safeguards that we've been trying to implore the board to impose, if any approval does go, because it's right smack next to a residence, right over that, not 8-foot fence, but 10-foot fence. Grandchildren are playing right on the other side of that fence. And if that buffer zone is not 20 feet and it's not fully vegetated, you really have a public health and safety issue here. And if there's nothing to occupy that space, guess what's going to be, it's going to be used for? Trucks. Right, idling while they're being repaired or not. And it'll be used just like the rest of the yard. That's the whole purpose of putting vegetation in a buffer zone. And the other thing is, you know, the applicant says he has a dozen trucks. I don't know whether that's all the trucks that are going to be serviced or maintained or stored temporarily or otherwise at this location. But to me, that sounds like a truck terminal. And a truck terminal requires a special permit from the ZBA. And if there's any storage of materials that are used for a commercial or industrial use, outside storage, that requires a special permit too. So it's not just a site plan review approval and we're done here. It's whether a site plan approval can be even issued for a commercial activity on an undersized lot for that zone. And even if it is, there are other zoning relief that is required here. And with regard to a variance from a lot dimensional requirements, your town council should be advising you that very rarely, if ever, will a variance be issued for that requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nagel.
So just very quickly.
Yes.
Again, the case that he had cited, I have reviewed that case, and again, it has to do with the structure. The reason why we're in this kind of situation where there's no clear case law is because they're not proposing to build a structure. It would be different if they were proposing to build a structure. That all comes down from the Bjorklund case and all of the cases that follow that. But here, the use does not require a structure, and they're leaving the existing structure on the property.
Thank you, Amy.
Can I respond to that? I need to go back.
Mr. Nagel, we have a lot of other hearings going on tonight, and to repeat ourselves is not really being too productive. But go ahead and say what you want to say.
As I cited in my letter to town council, I cited chapter 48, section 6, and also the comparable bylaw provision that basically says that pre-existing non-conforming uses may be allowed to continue unless there is a change in the structure or the use. So the distinction between a structure and a use is really a distinction without a difference when it comes to this situation. Because the statute and the bylaw both say that if a structure is modified or the use changes, then the current bylaw applies. And the current bylaw says that you have to have 90 feet of frontage and 90 feet of width. And this lot doesn't. It's really quite simple.
I think.
Can I ask
we
a-
just-
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Based on what Mr. Carney said. So we talked about there being an 8-foot fence permitted. Is it 8 feet off the ground on both sides, or is it raised 2 feet and then, so really it's a 10-foot fence? Because if you look at the photo there, Mr. Chairman, that's not an 8-foot fence, that's a 10-foot fence. And if you measure from the top down to the ground, that's 10 feet.
So are you suggesting that it'd be reduced to 8 feet?
I'm saying that there's an 8-foot fence, but it's raised up 2 feet from the
Right,
base,
so-
so now it's really a 10-foot fence.
Right, okay, so what is your
I
suggestion?
just want to clarify, was the permit for, is it measured from, where's it measured from? Is it measured from just
The ground.
the ground? Was it measured?
It's an 8-foot, as I recall, it was an 8-foot fence. If you put it on 2 feet of dirt, you don't call it a 10-foot fence, it's just an 8-foot fence on 2 feet of dirt. It's 10 feet high if you want to look at it that way.
That's kind of a big difference.
Well, if the fence is a fence, so whether it's.
Yeah, but if they start by raising it 2 feet off the ground, it's a 10-foot fence. I mean, let's be real. It's a 10-foot fence. Your photos right there shows it's a 10-foot fence. That's not a fence I'd want in my backyard.
2 feet open underneath the fence, is that what he's saying?
Yes.
Oh, I haven't seen
Evidently,
that.
there's 2 fences there.
I remember seeing a white solid fence.
That's his fence.
That's
That's his.
Patrick's.
Kearney's fence is the white fence, and Kearney's is the white one, and I didn't inspect the stockade is yours.
Stockade is 8 feet on my side. It starts at 8 feet, follows 8 feet level, and then it ends at 8 feet at the other end. The ground, on he's low point, so it's contiguous over. Now, I did step it up 9 inches, because when I was out there working, I found that he would stand in his pool and just watch us all day long. So there is a step.
Mr. Kearney,
Yes,
how tall is your white fence?
my white fence is 6 feet, sir.
It looks like his is more than,
And it's 6 inches away, which creates an alley for vermin. And we've had rats tunneling into our yard now.
it doesn't look like it's an 8-foot fence. I'd have to
It's,
measure it.
it's 8 foot from his side because he raised the grade 2 feet on his side. But on my side, it's a 10-foot fence with a gap underneath it that my grandchildren could get hurt in. And let me say something, he's not opening a flower shop next door to me, this is a trucking terminal. So safety's a big factor here.
This isn't a trucking terminal. There's no trucks there. They're off to this.
Oh, what?
I just asked an open fence at this time.
No, it's okay, I'll show you. Picture I took tonight before we came here. Would you like to see?
I'll come up and take a look at
There's
it.
all the plows. There's the plows, there's trucks,
I know.
there's trucks.
We were out there, I had a guy out there, I wasn't.
He's in
there.
and out every single day practically. I don't know how you haven't seen activity, I don't know how you haven't seen people into the house.
I sent the inspector out a week ago, whatever, I said, go by a couple times, see what's going on out there, see what's out there.
Yeah.
Plain view, without going on anybody's property. He said he saw a truck, and something else, and then and there was no activity, and I don't care about somebody living
Who-
there. And that's what I reported.
That's what you reported.
That's what he reported to me, and
Who-
I reported to.
Who reported to you?
My inspector did.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear that part. So,
And I don't know, I didn't sign off on the fence, I didn't do the inspection. I'll look at the paperwork and go look at the fence. I don't know about that.
there's a
Do
lot of
you object to
discrepancies
having-
here.
Do you object to having a higher fence?
What's that?
Do
I object to
you-
having the gap under the ground, I object to having a 6-inch alleyway between the two fences. Like I told you, we've now found rats digging into our yard. I can show you pictures of those too.
I don't handle that, but that's the health agent, et cetera, and you guys are welcome to put your fences that way, if that's the way you choose to do it.
If, I never chose anything here. My fence was up, my fence has been up for 15
No, the
years.
question is, Patrick, is do you want that fence reduced to 8 feet?
What I
Or do you
want,
want, no, let me ask you
Okay.
the question. Do you want the fence reduced to 8-foot height rather than a 10-foot height?
Well,
I'm just asking the question.
I understand. I think that if this ends up going forward, which as my attorney said, it really shouldn't, but if it ends up going forward, I would appreciate it if the retaining wall that's right against that fence, that gets pulled in the 20 feet, so now you definitely have a buffer strip that can't be used. And you have the 4 feet of compressed gravel that the trees are not gonna grow in, that'll have to come out. You'll have to put loam in there and plant trees. At that point, yes, I would like the fence to be lower, to be on the ground 8 feet. But if he's gonna have his retaining wall there, his trucks tower over his 8-foot fence.
Well, that's the reason why I asked
Yeah.
what height you would like to see the fence. I mean,
Well,
So
I'd
many
like to see, like I said, if we go forward, I'd like to see the fence down to 8 feet, but I'd also like to see the retaining wall moved in so that his raised fill is 20 feet away from my property. The trees can grow in the 20-foot buffer strip where everything is the same grade. Based on past behavior, there's no reason to believe he's going to comply with anything or maintain the buffer strips. So if you move the retaining wall in, then he can't use the buffer strips, and it's a legitimate buffer strip. Like I said, this is a maintenance garage. It's not open lot storage. Open lot storage is what Wayne Warmington has behind him when people drop their boats or their campers off in the winter and they pick them up in the spring. They sit there, they don't do anything. That's open lot storage. This is a maintenance facility. He's working on the trucks, period. He's admitted as such, his lawyer's admitted as such. So, in answer to your question, like I said, if this goes forward, I'd like to see the fence brought down to 8 feet, but only if the retaining wall and the raised grade are brought back 20 feet to create the buffer strip.
I don't think the retaining wall will be moved. I would suggest that to you, so.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you,
I
sir.
do not believe the retaining wall would be removed
On what basis?
on the basis that it's his property and he can probably do what he wants with on that property.
Well, that's the whole, that attitude is the whole problem while we're here. Because he
That's
came
what-
in and did whatever he wanted to.
Please, look, I don't want to go over all this, I've been over it before. Not only did he do something that was illegal, and we wouldn't have been brought into this thing unless it was the fill permit, which was on your property as well as his property.
Correct.
And so hopefully, we've somewhat solved that problem, but it's been difficult from the beginning. And we've done everything we can to try to solve this problem. The site plan came in afterwards. So often, things happen in this town, and we haven't got someone that's going around on every street of this town deciding whether someone did something in their yard or not. So until it's brought before us, we had nothing, we knew nothing about it.
I understand that.
And then when we got the complaint, which I think was probably originated by you, even though you moved a lot of
And
fill,
other neighbors.
And so that's what we went up, I went up there in, I forget the dates now, in April, and I went up again in June, and that's where we're at this point.
Right. Yes, I understand. I understand the process is where it's at right now. But you also have the authority to deny this plan and to tell him to restore the property as a grandfathered residence, too. You have that authority. It's in the bylaws. And in the town bylaws, 175-16 does say change of use, you have to comply with the new code.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with you on that, but that's, thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, I would please, and I understand you guys, you're volunteers, and you're giving your own time, and I appreciate that. And I apologize for getting so emotional about it, but you can see what I've been dealing with. And I know that you can only go on the information that you're given from the people that give it to you. It's not like you guys have to go out and research it yourselves and whatnot. I just think in some cases you're being misinformed, and I think there's been people up here misinterpreting the zoning bylaws. And I think, this is a dead horse and we're still beating it. But I'm so sick of this. I asked the board, please, do the right thing. Put it to a vote tonight and deny this project.
Thank you. Yes,
Yes, thank you. On behalf of the applicant, hopefully in conclusion, this has been a long, arduous process. It is a site plan review process. The case law in Massachusetts makes clear that site plan review is to allow for reasonable regulation, not prohibition. I understand the Cannies live next to this industrial property. They want to prohibit it. They don't want any part of it. But in fact, it's an allowed use in the industrial zone. Last month, when we were before you, the issue came up for the first time because the Kearneys came here for the first time with an attorney. and the issue of the frontage came up. And I, over the past month, have had occasion to spend hours researching that subject. And I concur with town council that there is no clear case law that says that the lot must conform to the current zoning, especially when you're going from a non-conforming use to a conforming use. Now, the Kearneys make a big deal about this 20-foot wide buffer strip. But if we look at what the bylaw says, it says that in order to protect residential land uses from potential noxious or disruptive effects of adjacent land uses of different character, the following buffer law and area shall prevail. And so I think that the board has done a tremendous job over the past 8 months in protecting the adjoining properties, which is what the whole focus of site plan review is all about. It's trying to accommodate everybody as much as they can be accommodated, and sometimes that accommodation isn't as perfect as it is other times, simply because you have a residence that's right next to an industrial zone. They bought there. You would assume that they knew that it was an industrial zone when they purchased. And so we have it now that Mr. Sullivan comes along and wishes to use the property for an allowed use and is willing to accept reasonable restrictions and conditions and terms on the site plan. He's come back with many things that the board has asked for, almost everything that the board has asked for. And so we continue, as Mr. Kearney said, to beat a dead horse.
Well, I guess we're continuing to do that.
Yeah, hey, just one more point.
Mr. Whitney.
The 20-foot wide that Mr. and Mrs. Kearney so vehemently asked the board to enforce, which is, as we've heard, there are different alternatives that can be provided. So the question is what Mr. Sullivan has provided, does that provide reasonable protection? And I'd suggest that it does. These arborvitaes are going to grow to 30 feet tall. That's what green giant arborvitaes grow to. And the question is, would 20 feet, would shrubs this tall be a better buffer than 11 feet with shrubs as tall as the ceiling? I'd suggest to the board that those tall arborvitaes are going to be a much better protection for Mr. and Mrs. Kearney's land. They don't want to accept that because they want to try to restrict Mr. Sullivan right off of the property. And I would suggest that he's provided to the board a reasonable plan and ask the board to vote in the affirmative.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney. Are there any comments from the public?
Is there somebody else that needs to comment first?
Yes, who needs to comment?
I don't know, does somebody else need to comment
Well,
first?
excuse me, Patrick. Is there anyone else that hasn't spoken would like to speak? Patrick?
Just addressing the whole, what Mr. Whitney said about me buying my house. When I bought my house, Butch Wilson was my real estate agent, and we saw that it was an industrial zone. We asked him about that, and he assured me that neither house could be turned into an industrial lot because neither house conforms to zoning.
Nope.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's an unfortunate situation.
Don't trust real estate agents.
The board, any other questions? So at this point, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion to deny, because.
Well, I just, on the motion to end
I'm
the,
sorry. Yep.
anything on that? No. So on the motion, all those in favor of closing the public hearings, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Okay, go right ahead.
I'm gonna make a motion to deny for not meeting guidelines such as buffer strips. They saw that we had a problem with it. They didn't come back with any sort of update. This is their plan. It doesn't meet what we need to do. And I don't think it should be, I don't think it's complete, and I don't think it's ready. And so I'm going to move to deny. If you guys don't agree with it, that's fine, but I want to take a vote on that.
PMP, is he still on the phone?
No.
No. But in PMP's opinion, that buffer zone was correct.
Well, Mike
Any-
Peralt
any
doesn't have a
discuss-
vote on this board.
Please?
Mike Peralt doesn't have a vote on this board.
That is absolutely correct. I'm just trying to explain
Yep.
what you asked. And so on that issue, Peralt agreed. We had that meeting, and that's the reason we have town council here this evening. And I believe she believes that it's permissible also. Am I speaking out of turn? No.
I missed what you said
You-
the last
you-
bit.
The buffer zone complies, as far as you're concerned, with the 20-foot.
Right now on the
Right.
plan, there's no
Yep.
structures being proposed
Right.
within that. However, I don't necessarily agree that they comply with 66 because, again, we just have a fence going down the back with no
Right.
vegetation proposed.
Right, we need to correct that, there's no question, yes.
But they asked us to close the hearing tonight. We're closing it. They haven't made an amendment to their plan. They're not in compliance. That's my argument.
Right, but we closed the public hearing.
Yep.
Okay. So, at this point, does someone want to make a motion? If it was to deny it, it's to deny it. If it's to approve it, obviously, there were some things we discussed. For one thing, there needs to be perhaps the same arborvitae hedge that would go the whole length of the property that faces the Cannon residence. Is there anything else?
I have a few things, but I didn't know if you want to take care of my motion first, and then we can talk about
Well, we haven't had a
conditions.
second on it yet.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I know it's not going to get seconded, but at least go through that, and then
I don't know it's not going to get
I have a
seconded.
few other conditions to mention.
Yes.
A condition that I'd like to make on this is, as the attorney has pointed out, our town attorney has pointed out,
Please, yeah. But
Yeah.
on-
We need to
So
do the
so
motion
the
first.
motion, you did what?
He needs.
He
needs
made
to take
a
action on
motion
his
and it
motion.
wasn't second.
It was
Rick made
not
it.
seconded.
So there's no second, so.
Thank you.
Going on with discussion. I
That's
guess.
fine.
Go ahead.
all right, one of the conditions, in addition to the buffer zone, the other things the chair will talk about, is that town council made a point that under this zoning, there's no in-house repairs are allowed, and everything's supposed to be sent out. The gentleman, the proponent, has said that he's been doing electrical work and repairs. Well, I'll take the word of the town council, who says that no repairs are allowed. So I would make a condition to approval of this, that there be absolutely no vehicle repairs allowed on this site.
Storage only.
Storage only, no repairs.
Okay, anything else? Yes, Rick.
Hours of operation, do we need to specify, a 7 to 7 or 7 to 8 timeframe, minus any emergencies that require the removal of trucks to go somewhere?
So your motion would be to have hours of operation from what time to what time?
Is there a current restriction on commercial industrial hours?
I'm not sure. That would be
That
question
would,
for Marshall.
in my opinion, that would conflict with the condition that was just proposed, because the
Oh,
condition that was just
storage.
proposed says no operations.
All right, that's right, okay.
So that would be a bit in conflict.
Okay, limited idling with diesel trucks, I know sometimes they need a idle to get warmed up to go, but that doesn't mean that they should be idled necessarily for a couple hours at a time. Is there a way to,
I think there's are you familiar with that,
There's a
Marshall?
DEP,
Yeah.
there's a DEP regulation.
And
on
how many minutes is that
It's
now?
5,
Huh?
5 or 10, I'd have to
Yeah,
check.
it is a
There is
limit.
there is a CMR that we can cite to.
okay.
Well, as a condition to that, could we,
We don't need to put that in there because that's a regulation.
the deal with diesel trucks in the wintertime, we know that there's issues. Could we require that they have like plug-in things for the diesels? so that you don't have to idle?
Usually they won't start if you don't have it.
Yeah.
So it would, I mean,
You should have a plug-in thing for the trucks.
they're gonna do that anyway. They won't be able to start the truck.
And there was something I'd like to know is, can we restrict the number of trucks on this site, council?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay, so what would what would be a good, this gentleman says he owns a dozen trucks, and I've been out there, and I think there's like 4 or 5 trucks out there right now. What would be the number that we could restrict to the site?
So, I understand that the hearing has been closed, so we have what we have, but, when I've reviewed site plans before with regard to trucking and, even, you know, storage, it's actually shown on the site plan where the storage of trucks would be. We don't have that, so, I guess,
He said he had 12 trucks at present.
if you
Yeah.
have,
And
it
the
also
trucks are,
depends on the size of the trucks.
right, and they're fairly long trucks because they have all
Great,
the,
great big 10-wheel dump trucks with plows.
7. You could probably fit 7, I think. I just,
We'll say like 8, maybe, oh,
I'm a
Yeah.
lawyer, I'm not a trucker. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
guessing.
I mean, he said 12, and they're all squeezed in there, so I'd give him the 12.
I would go along with the 12. If he wants to amend his site plan at some point, he can approve has the room for him.
okay, anything else?
So, just to make sure I fully understand, there doesn't need to be a 20-foot vegetative buffer, but they can't store anything within 20 feet of the lot line, is that correct? Okay. So, if they can't store anything, it might as well be vegetative, because they can't cross
Well, it's
that
a
line
dri-
anyway.
It's a driveway, it's a
Yeah.
driveway.
Say that again.
It's the driveway.
The driveway can't be within 20 feet.
No,
No,
no, the driveway's already there.
So they can store things within 12 feet of the fence.
They
they,
wouldn't be able to because it would block the entrance and exit.
No, the side lots, the side lot lines. Are they able to store things within 12 feet of the lot line?
No, I would say no.
That there has to be 20 feet away from the lot line as
Yes,
well?
I would say yes.
Okay, so if they can't store things, they can't store blades, they can't store salt, whatever they are,
salt spreaders, yeah.
salt sprayers, they can't store vehicles within 20 feet, make it vegetative. And here's my preference. Where there's currently already 1 row on the plan, that becomes a double row. And where there's nothing, that becomes a single row. That way it's extra buffering. They can't use that land anyway, so it might as well put more trees there.
Where the existing is the driveway on it coming in.
Yeah, all right, so I take that back to the
And then you'd be
driveway.
into the leaching trench.
Yeah. It goes behind the
So it's
652.
really just that area behind the leaching
Yeah.
that abuts residential because the other side doesn't.
I would prefer to see something there, because otherwise, it's gonna creep in closer and closer.
So have them pull that 11-foot strip out to
Yeah.
20.
At the very least. And did we say to put the trees along the entire
We have-
boundary?
yeah, I think it'll be there.
All right, so where are you putting the double trees?
We can't squeeze them in
There's
apparently.
no double trees.
Well, I'm not quite sure how well that would do with 2 rows of arborvitae that close together, because obviously one would shade the other, and you probably would, they wouldn't do well. So I would suggest that it be probably a deciduous tree of some sort, or shrubbery of some sort. It wouldn't really block anything. It wouldn't be as tall as the arborvitae.
No, but it's more
And the
just,
arborvitae would be on the fence side, and then perhaps planting on, a lower planting on the inside of the arborvitaes. I don't know what, but
having a big salt truck 20 feet away from a fence line versus 11 feet away from a fence line, I think makes a difference.
true.
So even if you need a hedgerow to remind them, no, you can't come back any further, or something, I think that would be a fair option.
All right.
I want to make a comment on the plantings. The chairman, Mr. Smith, is a arborist, and he has more expertise in this area. But a concern has been made that 4 inches alone, and then there's all this junk below it. Could we make sure that the provisions for the plantings are that proper preparation and excavations are made when these trees are planted, so that they have a chance of succeeding?
It'd be in their best interest, because otherwise, if they didn't have enough loam or, you know.
I'm just saying we should make this as a condition. I mean, they don't want to spend the money, these things are expensive, I'm sure. And it would be in their best interest to do this right, but I think, given the history of this project, I think this is something that we need to specify in the conditions.
I would suggest just a comment of best planting practices.
Yeah. Best
And
plant-
obviously, if they're dying, they're replacing them.
Yeah, best
So
planting
it would be in
practices,
their best
yeah.
interest.
I just feel fortunate that Wayne is on this board and he has the knowledge of this. Mr. Smith.
So if we can start writing a motion then, that there be no in-house repairs on the vehicles, and the vehicles are there for storage only. That hours of operations won't be on there, and that there be a maximum of 12 trucks parked on the property, that there be a 20-foot planting strip on the rear of the property from where the detention base, not detention, the structure is to the end of the property line, all the way down a row of arborvitaes, and some kind of planting material approved by the planning board upon presentation, or a hedge or something, so that that area that is now listed as 11 feet will be 20 feet of bed or grass with plantings. That the fence be properly sized as far as height is concerned for the, where the existing fence is over 8 feet tall, or whatever that figure was. Was it 8 foot or 6 foot?
8.
8 foot, so it
So you
should,
want the fence adjusted so
I
it's
want-
8 feet around all 8 feet?
I want it so it's only 8 feet,
All the
so
way
it
around,
would
right.
match with the white fence of the neighbors. That the planting be done in American nurseryman's standards. Some thought should be given to, if they put in 6 foot or 8 foot of loam, obviously the grass is going to do much better than if it's only 4 inches. And you're going to have to water it more often if it's only 4 inches.
I don't think it's gonna be a grass strip with all the arborvitaes in there.
Well, it would be some of it, but I mean, yeah, eventually the arborvitae with that type of plant will take over that area. The only problem that you can have with arborvitaes is if you have too much shade, they will not do well. And that fence could cause some of that problem.
So do you want 8 inches of loam or 4?
I'd prefer to see 6 inches of loam. I think it's in their best interest. Was there anything else?
Do you want to include the PMP letter?
Yes, and to include the PMP letter of April 12th, 2021.
And you're going to require observation services out there?
Yeah, and that PMP will review the project as it goes along. Is there anything I'm forgetting?
We're gonna add the truck running section of the CMR.
Yes, I mean that they would adhere to all DOT regulations as far as idling is concerned. Might as well put it in there. And that storage of materials, plows and so forth should not be put into that buffer zone, in that buffer zone area. And that all trucks should be registered.
Plows and salt spreaders, and et cetera, et cetera.
All vehicles or all trucks?
All-
Registered.
All vehicles should be registered.
I think you got it.
Anything else? So if someone wants to make that motion,
I'll make it.
motion made,
Second.
seconded. Any further discussion?
Should we read the conditions, Liz, could you read the conditions of the motion just for the record, please?
No in-house repairs, open lot storage only, maximum of 12 trucks on the property, 20-foot planting strip at rear from where the chamber is installed all the way around to the back, arborvitae and other plantings, using the American nurseryman standards, grass with plantings on that hill, and 6 inches of loam instead of the 4 presented. The fence shall be adjusted so that it's 8 feet around and consistent with the rest of the fence.
With the white fence?
The white fence. Condition upon the PMP letter for 12/21, there will be observation services required for installation as outlined in the PMP letter. The DEP and CMR standards regarding idling shall be followed, and the storage of equipment is not allowed in the buffer zone, and all vehicles shall be registered.
On the motion, it's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
One opposed. That concludes the public hearing, and which was concluded, that concludes this discussion on this article.
So that was 3-1, right? Wayne? 3-1?
Please?
Was that 3-1? Is that what I heard?
Yes, it was. A public hearing, Phil brought on-site with no permit, 67 Oak Street, continued.
Mr. McKinnon was asked to provide a letter to continue the hearing, and I have not received anything. I did get a call from Carl Garvey telling me that Mr. McKinnon had reached out to him to draw a plan, but other than that, I've received nothing. No comment, no email, no nothing. So I don't know what you want to do.
So we will continue the hearing to next month and send a letter telling him that we expect him to be here at the next meeting.
Okay.
Public hearing,
Can you vote to continue that for me?
motion to continue the public hearing to our next meeting.
Should it be a little more than just continue, shall we? I don't know how, I'm asking the question, I guess. Obviously, you didn't reach out to Liz to request the,
No, there's been no contact since,
I guess I got a problem with that. I mean, do we?
since the
cease and
April
desist?
meeting.
Do we, I don't know what the answer is. I guess maybe Amy could help us.
Surprise.
I know.
Sorry,
Did
you
you wanna
couldn't
go
get out of
home?
here fast enough.
I'm sorry. This is part of that whole thing. It's a gentleman on the right-hand side, Mr. McKinnon,
Okay.
and a lot of the fill went to his property, so as a result of that coming out of the meeting.
That's part of
We
that berm in the
contacted
back, right?
Hmm?
Part of that berm in the back is
Yeah.
McKinnon.
Yeah, it's part of that, and then, yeah, and then he has his own berm on his property as well. So we sent him a letter asking him to file a fill application, and he has not.
Okay.
And then in April, he came in, and I went through the whole process with him, and I haven't heard anything from him since.
So he still hasn't filed anything?
Nothing.
And this
So
is
why is
the,
it on the agenda if he hasn't filed anything?
Because he filled out like a half an application
Okay.
and asked to, and he did
Yeah.
attend the
Okay,
March meeting, and then he was not here in April, and he's not here.
okay. So, you could, I guess you have two options. You either continue it or you deny his bill permit based on lack of information, which he'll just reapply, it appears. So this, I think, is this the one that Greg was doing enforcement on?
Yeah,
So, yeah, we should probably issue some more enforcement,
okay.
yeah. If
So
he's not gonna show up.
we'll do that. We don't need a motion to do that.
Yeah.
that's what I was looking for.
We're doing,
We
okay.
can do that.
So, well,
So would you continue it and enforcement?
Yeah, because he can just, there's no limitation, he can just fill out another
Yeah.
application, there's no
Yep,
2-year requirement, 2-year stay or anything.
okay. So I guess I'll make that motion.
Motion made.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved.
You better leave quick.
Can I go now?
You better leave quick.
Thank
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. 6:15, public hearing, special permit to exceed 50% residential use in the CBD, 513 Washington Street. And I'll read it. The Abington Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, May 3rd, 2021, at 6:15 PM at Abington Town Hall, 500 Glenowitz Way, Abington, Mass., on a petition of Abington, Washington Realty Trust, 14 Prospect Street, Southeastern Mass., for a special permit to allow more than 50% residential use in the CBD under the Abington zoning bylaw, Section 17538C. The property is located at 513 Washington Street on Assessors Map 23, Lot 196. Plans can be viewed at the Town Clerk's office, Wayne P. Smith, Brockton Enterprise, April 19th and April 26th. Who's speaking on that? Anyone?
My name is Krista Manna. I am the architect for the project. And I actually live in the town of Abington, so. The project proposed is to have it's currently zoned as Central Business District, and my client would like to have an apartment in the back, and his business would be in the front, so it would be a very small office in the front to conduct his contracting business, just have meetings. It has a conference room and an office, and then the apartment would be separate in the back on the first floor. Very minimal work being done to the outside, kind of expanding the existing exit egress so that there is two means of egress out of the apartment as well as out of the office.
Board members? Yes.
how many, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
So the existing building on the outside really isn't being changed other than
Nope.
egresses? So,
How many residential units are currently in the building?
There is one unit on the second floor currently.
And the first floor had been the insurance company for a bunch of years?
Yes.
Okay. And
The
so,
second floor was business also at one point.
I'm sorry?
The second floor was business at one time, too.
Okay. And so the first floor would be split up, and this is for Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Okay, so his business office would be in the front of it,
Yep.
and then in the back would be a second residential unit.
Yes.
And that meets our minimum space requirements for a residential unit. I think it's like 600, 500 feet or something. How many square feet is the?
I mean, it's a two-bedroom, Marshall won't give him a permit if it does.
Yeah, okay,
Is this
All
the
right.
old Slattery insurance?
Yes.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it because it could always return back to business space, hypothetically. We're not eliminating it in long-term use.
Right.
That's kind of my personal thought, is that, this isn't close the door on any future commercial space moving forward, that it could always
No,
revert
I
back.
would hate to see all of a sudden people living in the front part, which sometimes happens when
Yeah.
you start this.
I'm just happy to see it
And there's
continuing
no,
as some sort of commercial use.
there's no kitchen in the front half, so there's no way that it could be converted.
I bought my car insurance there from when I was 16. Now I had to go to
Who
Rockland.
didn't, Bruce, who didn't at one point or another?
Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Somebody in the public maybe wants to
Please?
have a comment.
What's that?
Somebody else wants to have a comment.
Any public comment?
No, I'm sorry. Any public comment? Being none.
Motion made.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Motion, second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Someone want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve as presented?
Second.
Second, any further discussion?
According to the
All those
plan,
in-
that's what you.
That's a special permit, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All those approved, say aye.
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 Unanimous, thank you. Thank you.
We have 1 minute break, 2-minute
Yes,
break?
yes, 1 minute break.
Thank you.
The public hearing on Monday, May 3rd, 2021, at 6:30 at Abington Town Hall, 500 Glenowitz Way, Abington, Mass., on a petition of Properties Real Estate Company for a special permit to build a 10-unit, one-bedroom per unit building to allow in all residential use the site plan review in the Central Business District, CBD, under the zoning bylaw, Section 17538 and Section 17577. The property is located at 176 Whale Street on Assessors Map 53, Lot 176. Plans can be viewed at the Town Clerk's office. Wayne Smith, Chairman, advertising the Brockton Enterprise on April 19th and April 26th.
Hello, David, how are you? So we'll just have,
And we have
Whale
our engineer on the phone.
Okay.
Can I ask a dumb question? We don't have technology in this room so we can see Dave?
Yeah, I know it.
This new building of ours?
He doesn't want to be seen.
I don't blame him.
I just have
I'm
to
sure that
configure
Ann
it, so I don't
would be
want to.
thrilled about having her husband on TV.
All right. So what do you want to do? Listen to him and then have Dave give his?
We'll let Dave speak afterwards, all right?
Okay, so I'm going to let you just listen, okay?
Correct.
Good evening, Mr.
Good
Chairman.
evening.
Members of the Planning Board. For the record, Frank Marinelli. I'm an attorney with offices at 439 Washington Street in Braintree. I'm pleased to appear this evening on behalf of Stephen Zabowski and Property Real Estate Company, his company. Mr. Zabowski is here with me, along with our civil engineer, Sean Hardy, who prepared the site plans that have been filed with you. And at the conclusion of our presentation, we're happy to answer any questions that you or members of the public may have. This is an application to construct 10 one-bedroom apartments, as shown on the site plans filed with the board. And these are apartments that are architecturally pleasing. They show an appropriately sited building, aesthetically designed with gables, exterior molding, hardy board, clapboard siding, and cedar shingle materials. Each unit, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, is one bedroom and approximately 674 square feet. The building interior is approximately 9,300 square feet. Mr. Zabowski has been an owner, developer, and manager of real estate for over 25 years and has the experience and capability to develop a quality project at 176 Wales Street. He's done similar redevelopment and development in Braintree, Abington, and Weymouth just recently. He did 351 Summer Street here in Abington, 10 units. He has developed, by way of background, over 48 residential units and approximately 14 commercial units. He is recently the developer of choice for the for the Holbrook South Franklin Elementary School, which is a 13-acre property. And in Holbrook, they passed an overlay district where we were allowed to redevelop that 13-acre property for 40 townhouses and 10 single-family homes. So again, addressing the need for alternatives to single-family homes for younger people that want to stay in the town, empty nesters, et cetera. It is a much-needed residential alternative. The site is shown on Sean's site plan that's been filed with you is approximately 27,000 square feet. It's a elongated rectangular shaped parcel with a 90-foot frontage and much deeper, much longer depth, over 150 feet. The undeveloped lot is located in the R20 zoning district with central business district overlay. So as the board knows, the R20 district allows multi-unit residential, as we're proposing here tonight. In the bylaw, in section 175-5, multi-unit residential, the R20 is listed as high-density residential. So we have an appropriately designed and appropriate quantity of apartments for the site with the 10-unit building in the R20 zone. The central business district overlay, as the board knows, provides some requirements for multifamily standalone development. The lot must be at least 5,000 square feet. That's requirement number one, and obviously we're over 5 times that requirement. Secondly, the building must be connected to public sewer system, which will be done and is proposed. Thirdly, the proposal must have at least 1 parking space per dwelling unit, and we're 30% greater than that. We have 10 units and we have 13 parking spaces, so more than the 10 that would be required. There shall be no more than 2 bedrooms per unit is the 4th requirement, and clearly we meet that requirement. All of the 10 units are 1 bedroom, so that requirement is met as well. And finally, under the CBD, all units must meet the minimum requirements of the building and health codes for habitable space, and clearly we're going to do that. You have an experienced builder, and he will build this so that clearly the requirements of building and health codes will be met. So that's the requirements under the CBD and under the R20. And we would respectfully submit also that the stormwater management system, we filed the stormwater management report with the board, and Sean can talk a little bit about that. There's 89 Caltech chambers on the site to ensure recharge on the site, and the stormwater management system will reduce the stormwater runoff flow rate and volume by providing this on-site infiltration. So again, another improvement on the development. I know that the board received the comment letter, the peer review letter from Mr. Johnson, who I know is on the phone. So, if obviously you have that letter. That letter points out that, it's the opinion of the reviewer that a traffic study is not warranted for 10 one-bedroom units. There's certainly the capacity of the road network, and the vehicle trips are really not anything that creates any impact at all. The final thing that I wanted to address is the specifics of the site plan and the special permit definition in the bylaws. I know that one of the things that's cited in the report, in the peer review report, is the parking that's designed on the side. And let me just, this is the context plan that you're required to have when you file. And you can see here's the site right here, 176 Wales. Here is 200 Wales. That's a 43 unit commercial building with offices, artist studios, et cetera. So that's commercial to the east, and then to the west, you have 168 Wales, and that's multi-family residential. And then over here on the corner of Adams and Wales is another multi-family residential. So the context of what is proposed is appropriate. And I'd only point out to the board that the parking for the two residential properties, multi-family residential properties to the west, also has parking on the side. And the reason that we put 7 parking, this is the proposed layout here. This is the building. This is 7 parking spaces here, another 6 here. And we leave this entirely wooded. And in the context, I know Stephen has spoken with the neighborhood, and in the context of the neighbors, what we wanted to do was leave this wooded back here, because this would abut a backyard of the house that's on fronts on Adams, and it also abuts another one on Jefferson. So that provides a nice natural wooded buffer, and it's substantial because the allowable lot coverage is 60%, but we're just over 50%. So we're almost 10% greater in undeveloped, no building coverage than is allowed by the maximum building coverage. And maximum building coverage 60%, we're at 50.2%, just over 50%. So we want to leave that, we want to put the parking to the side, and that provides for really safer and more direct ingress, egress to and from the building, to the residents of the building as well, as opposed to putting more parking more remotely from the building. So we hope that you will consider that, because the CBD does talk about, in the central business district, talks about parking shall not be allowed in the front or side yard areas. But the special permit, consistent with what we have in the neighborhood there, the special permit definition, if you look at the special permit definition in 175-4, it talks about a special permit is not a variance, but may include a variance of dimensional and similar requirements incidental to the special permit. I've been doing land use for about 35 years, and you don't ordinarily see that type of language in a special permit. To me, it looks like it was intended to say to the board, when you grant a special permit, you also have the ability to grant minor relief, variance of dimensional and similar requirements incidental to the special permit. I personally don't think it means that you have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and get a finding or a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. If the board or town council determines that we have to, I know that we will work with the town and do what the town advises. But I just want to point out that your definition of special permit seems to allow the planning board, in the context of granting a special permit, to also make such variance of dimensional and similar requirements incidental to the special permit. And I would respectfully submit that what you have here is an appropriate layout with the parking on the side. We really don't want to push it to the back. There's no need to, because there's no real interests of privacy to either side. We have a commercial building on this side. I suppose we could move the building over 5 feet, and we could pick up, 10 feet on the driveway side, because you're allowed to do a zero setback on the easterly, where it borders the commercial, under note 13 of the table of dimensional and density requirements. But we think we've done a good job, I think the civil engineer's done a good job. Sean can speak to it, can answer your questions on stormwater or any questions you might have. But we'd ask you to consider this plan. We'd ask you also to consider allowing the parking on the side as opposed to requiring it to be pushed to the rear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
members of the board.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I've got you on speaker.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board. Hope all is well with you guys these days. Thanks for letting me call in. My review tonight is going to focus on some of the zoning and site planning issues. I spoke earlier with the design engineer and we hashed out some of the issues regarding the stormwater and drainage on the site. And if the board does have any questions on that, I'd be glad to answer them. I identified two zoning issues. They've been discussed somewhat already tonight, but I think I have a difference of opinion, and I think that opinion is going to require the building inspector to weigh in on the interpretation of the bylaw. In terms of the parking in the side yard, the big question is, does the zoning bylaw contemplate no parking in the side yard setback or in the side yard area? The building inspector needs to make a determination of what the town's going to, on this project and any future project, how they're going to interpret that requirement. The second item is the setback from the right side of the property to the abutting property that has a setback proposed of 6.8 feet. Both that comment and the comment about the parking, if you go to the section of the zoning bylaw for central business district, at the end of the central business district, there's a section, I think it's E4, that talks about construction of the projects, either historic rehabilitation or of historic quality. There are several standards that need to be met, and the last one, E4, talks about deviations from sections of the zoning bylaw that aren't noted above, and it specifically references by special permit from the Board of Appeals. So that is the second item that really needs to be resolved in terms of the town's going forth and implementing and enforcing these sections of the zoning bylaw. So my comment was that it appears that setback requirement needs to be addressed by the zoning board of appeals. But we'll pass that on to building inspector for his decision. In terms of traffic, I think the applicant went over that. We visited the site, and it appears that the sight lines are adequate in both directions. With grade and construction of Whale Street appears to be able to accommodate the proposed development, and in our opinion, a traffic study is not warranted for 10 one-bedroom units in this particular location in the central business district. In terms of parking and circulation, it was unclear whether or not curbing was going to be proposed here. It's recommended along with curb stops, particularly because, as proposed, the parking spaces in the side yard area come right up to the sidewalk, and the sidewalk is right up against the building. There's no landscaping proposed along the sidewalk, between the sidewalk and the building. And the concern there is, with no curb stops, no curbing, and no landscaping to separate vehicles from the building, there's going to be a tendency for the vehicles parking in those spaces to intrude upon the sidewalk, which is minimal width, and the sidewalk will really become useless. We also note that within the site, there is really no landscaping at all to soften the size of this building. We are recommending that as part of resolving this issue with the parking in the side yard, that the applicant's engineer look at doing some reconfiguration so that some type of landscaping can be provided internal to the site. The landscaping plan that they submitted is really not very definitive in nature as to what's being planted for species. And I did note that they did mention multi-stem trees in the front yard, which is only a 10-foot setback, and comment that don't feel that there's adequate room in a 10-foot setback, given the fact that that area is being also consumed underneath with water line, sewer line, and gas line. So I think the landscaping plan needs to look at the landscaping in the front of the building. The front of the building, in my opinion, is attractive, and I think an attractive landscaping palette in the front would only reinforce the appearance of the front of that building. I've spoken with the design engineer about the need to make these parking spaces comply with the 10 by 18 space requirements of the zoning bylaw. The grading on the site, as I mentioned in my opening comments in the review, there's 1 foot or less topographic relief across this property, which creates a little difficulty for the design engineer to grade the property when you have a building as long as it is in no topography. The design of the parking lot and the grading has to be a little more critical in order to create some topographic relief in order to get the stormwater to run in the parking lots, and also being able to grade up to the building in order to provide access to the buildings that meet building code requirements. So the main issue with the grading is that when they create the high point for this driveway, it's approximately 2 feet higher than the surrounding property to the left of the driveway, and we're only about 5 feet off the property line. So something needs to be looked at to address how this is going to be graded to ensure that runoff is not going onto the property adjacent to this. It is not as significant if they're going to curb this parking lot. The issue of runoff onto the abutting property isn't as critical. It is also at the high point, but there is also a spot down the driveway heading towards the street where there is some topographic relief above the abutting property. So that is not a very difficult thing to look at, and it's not critical, but we need to at least acknowledge that needs to be addressed. There's no lighting proposed on the site plan. Our recommendation, given the fully residential nature of this property, would be to look at some type of post lighting rather than wall lighting or typical parking lot lighting. I think, again, it would add to the attractiveness of the project and set it apart as a residential development. And I did comment on the special permit for 100% residential use, and it was our opinion that the the site was appropriate for all residential use. And the reasons that I articulated in the report was that Whale Street, because of its location off the main businesses in North Abington, it was not particularly ideal for commercial use. There was also a general residential nature of the surrounding area. The walking distance to the businesses would be encouraging for residents to use to try to get people out and using sidewalks and creating that type of atmosphere to support the resident, to support the commercial uses. And there's also recreational opportunity across Whale Street, where the ball field and tennis court and walking areas are located. So those are my site planning and planning type concerns. As I mentioned at the outset, the design engineer and I have been looking at the resolving the stormwater comments. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has or the applicant and his engineering designer might have.
Any questions from the board?
Bill?
Any questions from the public?
So I don't have an issue with the 100% residential, because as Dave points out, it's a weird spot to require a business.
Yeah.
That said, I think David's also identified a number of issues with the proposal as of now, in terms of dimensional, parking, landscaping, all those things that he mentions. You know, I think we all would probably agree with him. I argue I'd like to see a little bit more when it comes to the architecture as well, just because our bylaw says maximum consideration shall be given to building design and landscape elements in this district. And I think it could use a little bit more as you go out the street. I would have a concern about parking only because what I'd hate to see are all the spaces taken along Arnold Field, because that is used for Little League, and, you know, if there is 13 units, hypothetically, you could have 26 cars. You know, maybe not everyone has two people living there, but if it's a one bedroom, you could have two people in each unit. So, is there a way we can designate where that space, because there's a lot of public parking in that area, but maybe it's better closer to the rail versus right along the park rim. That's one thought I had, but.
Just for the record, there's 10 units, one bedroom. We have 13 parking spaces.
Right.
So, yeah, not 13 units, but
I'm sorry.
10.
I said
That's
that
all right.
backwards.
I just wanted to make sure that we were clear that it's 10 units, 13 parking spaces.
Obviously, I think that's street parking, parallel parking, right?
Yes.
So in the wintertime, that wouldn't be allowed anyway with snow removal, but.
Yeah, that's really my concern, because I think a lot of development that's taking place up there, a lot of people do park on the street and stuff like that. So I just want to make sure that, you know, there's sufficient parking in this project so that people will be able to park off the street.
Mm-hmm.
If that means people are going to have to park around the back of this thing, you know, so be it. Well, is it a common ownership of the old Abington Incorporated building and this building?
The 200 Wales?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's separate lot and separate ownership.
okay. So there wouldn't be any parking over there or anything like that. It would strictly be for this building.
Yeah, I think that the CBD sets the requirements, set it 1. I hear what the board is saying. We're 30% more. You know, the one-bedroom units, you're going to probably get, you know, some young people who want to stay in the town and can't afford to buy a home. going to get maybe some empty nesters. Steve has a lot of demographic information on who he rents to on his other developments, but, you know, this type of housing alternative is necessary. You know, it's really beneficial. It's $1 million investment in the town as well. On this lot, it's about $1 million. And, you know, we're happy to answer any other question. I think what we're left with is really the special permit for the use. We would like to, you know, submit to the board that we've made the case on the special permit for the use, which is really, again, in the definition, it talks about, number one is the use requested, listed in the table of use regulations, and clearly it is. It's R20, it allows this, allows high-density residential. We're not really high-density, but we're residential allowed by special permit. And, you know, we're not overloading in terms of traffic or any of those items in number 2. And number 3, there are no special regulations for the use under the special permit. Number 4, the use is desirable to the public convenience and welfare. Again, I'd cite the need for housing. There's a lot of reports out there. The South Shore Chamber did a housing report that said the South Shore needs 40,000 new housing units by 2030 to remain competitive as a region for workforce housing, folks who, again, can't afford the price point of a single-family home, and people who just don't want to, they want to have a housing alternative. So I think we've met the requirements for the special permit. I think the board members yourselves have cited it as far as the use being appropriate. Not appropriate for mixed use. I mean, you can walk in that area and know that a business wouldn't probably make it if it was a mixed use at that site, but it's very appropriate in the context of the other properties around. It's very appropriate for the residential use that we're proposing.
If you were coming to us for something on North Avenue, I might have 139, I might have an issue, because that's on a main traffic. But
right.
Personally, I don't have an issue with this thing.
It's a good point made on parking. If possibly you could put a few more parking spaces in there, it sounds like it might be a worthwhile thing to do. I noticed where you have the snow storage, that there's some space there, which obviously, I don't know, but maybe you'd even have to push it back a little bit further.
I know it's required, but if you could give us a couple more, just to make sure people won't be parking.
I just don't know where they're going to park because even though there is street parking around there, during the wintertime, there isn't street parking around there. I mean, you obviously go over to not Wales Street to where the post office is. Yeah. And there's some spots over in that way where the park is and so forth.
Well, we just want to get as much off-street parking on this as we can.
Understood. I'm not an engineer, so I can't comment with any authority, but maybe Sean and Steve can take a look at the plan and see what we can do in light of the board's comments and on the parking issue. Even though we meet the parking, I get it that you'd like to see a few more, what we can look at.
And I think what you need to do is go over this more with Dave on you know, handling some of these things. I think, Sean, you can probably work with him.
I spoke to Mr. Johnson today. I think it was a good conversation. I agree with many of his comments. I think some we still needed to discuss. I was going to look up some information. He was going to look up some information, but certainly reading it, I didn't see anything engineering-wise like, whoa, hey, hold on a second. You know, I think we're relatively on the same page. I know there's some clarification on some things. I know I do have to push that back a little bit because I need a 25-foot aisle instead of a 24, and the parking spaces need to get a little bigger to meet the zoning. So there is going to be a little bit of shifting that happens with some of the parking anyway, as far as that goes. So
Can you have that done within a week or so to give to Dave so that we can have continue the hearing until June? Or do you want to go into July?
My client tells me it'll be this week. So what's the deadline for that?
What's the deadline on that, Liz?
For next month?
Yes.
This Friday.
What, a week?
This Friday.
This Friday. This Friday.
Dave,
Yes,
How far in advance would you need revisions to get them back to the board? Like 5 days before the meeting?
well, I can do a review. If I had, a working week, and if I had it on Monday and I had to get it to you on a Thursday like I normally end up doing, if I had them in hand, for Monday morning, a week that you have to send it out, that would be ample time given the review that I've done and my conversations with, Sean Hardy. So,
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna make it the Friday before.
So,
So, do you have a calendar?
yes.
Hold on, please. I'm buying you some time.
Thank you.
All right, so,
Or else Steve's
We're
gonna
in
be
May.
sitting in my office.
so if I get it to you the 21st, you could have something back to me by the 27th.
Definitely.
yes,
Okay.
I can.
21st?
Definitely.
Okay. All right, thank you. You want me to let you go now and I'll call you back for Cape Cod lumber?
So,
Sure.
Okay.
And, you
So
can
we can-
just tell the board also that when I spoke with them today, I
we'll
gave them some
continue it
suggestions on how
to
we might,
to our June meeting.
redesign the parking and get a little landscaping around the building, so I'll speak to, engineer this week about how we might be able to move forward with that.
All right, very good, thank you.
Okay, so, you can call me back on Cape Cod lumber?
Yep, probably in a couple of minutes.
Should be June 7th.
June
Thank you.
7th.
Bye.
Thank you.
Talking, I don't really see a problem with the special permit to have all residential at this point. And the only other thing that you need to know about is that there is some question on the availability of water in the town of Abington. So before you, that's something that has not been determined yet. So I think you need to talk with the water department to make sure that you can hook into the water.
Apparently, there are no new connections. Apparently. Like 4 or 5 days ago.
But
But they're doing a study. So to look at supply and demand, so.
but my
Hold on.
suggestion would be to get an application into them in case there's a, you know.
Thank you very much.
So you guys are
Night.
gonna continue this?
Motion to continue the hearing until June 3rd. Motion.
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. So moved. Thanks.
All right, and do they need to get an opinion from the building inspector on
Yeah.
those other things?
Yes, why don't you get in touch with the building inspector, or we can do it. I think it'd be just as easy for you to do that and find out that he approves. All right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this 225? Huh? I'm gonna skip the next one, all right? The floodplain wetland, we can,
No, that's Cape Cod lumber.
It's 225 Grove, it's okay.
That's a special.
oh, that's the
permit.
same thing, oh, okay,
Yeah.
you're right.
Right.
So, site plan review and special permits for work on floodplain wetland protection district and environmental impact statement at 225 Groveland Street.
So, you have a hearing notice for that? Thank you.
The Abington Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, May 3rd, 2021, at 6:45 PM at the Abington Town Hall, 500 Glenowitz Way, Abington, Mass., on an application of CCL Abington Fendog LLC, 225 Groveland Street, Abington, Mass., for a special permit and approval of environmental impact statement pursuant to zoning bylaw 17535 to construct 3 storage structures under 7,500 square feet in the floodplain wetlands protection overlay district. The property is owned by CCL Abington, Fendog, 225 Groveland Street, Abington, Mass. The property is located at 225 Groveland Street and located on Assessors Map 14, Lot 20. Plans may be viewed at the town clerk's office, Wayne Smith, Chairman, and advertised, can't quite see it. I don't know what that is, but.
April
419,
19th.
420, 419,
Oh,
420.
426, there's some other figures with it, yeah.
Oh.
Thank you.
Sir?
Sean?
Good evening. My name's Attorney Sean Riley of 500 Washington Street, here representing the applicant. With me tonight is I'm going to call him the owner, the man in charge of Cape Cod Lumber and of the property, Mr. Harvey Hurwitz. Also, Mr. Garrett Horsfall from the Kelly Engineering Group, who is our engineer and can answer any of the more technical questions if there are any questions. Just a quick review, we filed with the board an application for site plan review and for the special permit. With that, we submitted a project description, the required assessor's cards, assessor's plans. We also submitted an environmental impact statement, a photometric plan, 2 copies of the stormwater management report, 86 pages, the abutters list, the envelopes, and a check for $4,350 in filing and engineering fees. Mr. Hurwitz and his company have been here before. As you recall, the history of this property, Cape Cod Lumber used to be located on Route 18, and it needed to merge its business in Abington and Mansfield, and decided it wanted to stay and wanted to reinvest in Abington. And, of course, the town and many of the families in Abington have benefited with the employees that he keeps working even through this tough pandemic. It's a 56-plus acre parcel in the highway commercial zone, over 2 million square feet of property. As you know, there's an existing lumberyard warehouse building with existing accessory buildings out back for storage and also a design center. The proposal, which Mr. Hurwitz will describe in a little more detail shortly, is to add 3 more storage buildings out back where the other storage buildings are, and these will be located, if you're on Groveland Street, to the far right corner of the existing developed area, so as far away from neighbors as possible. The existing accessory building that's closest to the lot line, to the rear lot line, is about 142 feet away. These buildings, the 3 new ones, would be no closer than 151 feet. There's an existing wooden sound barrier or fence that will be enhanced by using these new buildings as additional noise and sight barriers, and the existing trees and vegetated buffers will be maintained in the homes behind Daniel Drive and Karen Lane. The owner has specifically designed the location and the orientation of those proposed buildings for the benefit of those neighbors. These proposed buildings will conform to all setback under zoning, all dimension requirements. The total lot coverage will be 22.5%, which easily satisfies the maximum limit of 60%. There are no wetlands to be altered on the site. There are no additional parking spaces required, no additional traffic to be generated, and an updated stormwater management report and site design has been submitted by Kelly Engineering. We respectfully request that the special permit to do work in the local floodplain overlay district be approved and that the site plan be approved. I think the board is well aware of the purpose of the special permit in the floodplain. About half of the land in Abington is in that local overlay district. I have copies of that plan if you need that for reference. It is not in a FEMA flood zone. A lot of people confuse this special permit for something to do with FEMA flood zones. We are not working in a FEMA flood zone. So we demonstrate that we're not in a FEMA flood zone. Part of the land is in the local overlay district, which triggers the need for a special permit. And part of that special permit application, God bless you, is to demonstrate that what we're proposing would not flood a neighbor. And as the submitted plans show, the stormwater management report, and I know the town's consulting engineer, Norwood Engineering, and Dave Johnson has reviewed it rather thoroughly. There are no water issues. We are continuing to collect any water that hits our buildings or our pavement, let it fall into water, let it go into the existing retention pond, which is over near the town landfill, essentially taking water away from our closest neighbors. So I think it's a well-designed project by Kelly Engineering, well thought out by Mr. Hurwitz. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with my presentation because I know you've been here for a number of hours already, and I think we have a pretty substantial application package, but we're more than happy to answer any discussion or questions. But I would like Mr. Hurwitz just to briefly summarize why he's doing this and what he sees as the need for this at Cape Cod Lumber in the future of Cape Cod Lumber. So, Mr. Hurwitz.
Yeah, one correction I wanted to make. Sean mentioned that I'm the owner of Cape Cod Lumber. I was the owner of Cape Cod Lumber, but now we're 100% employee-owned.
Which is great. Are you still an employee?
I'm an employee.
Just like to know,
So
where did you get the
technically
name?
They didn't throw me out yet.
So technically, you're still part owner if you're an employee.
No, I'm not part of the plan, no. I'm the only employee that won't have that opportunity.
Mr. Hurwitz, where did you get the name of this real estate trust? That was fascinating to me.
Well, we had, actually, my dog's name was Phoenix. Yeah, I don't want to go into it now. I get kind of weepy when I think of him because he passed away a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
But we thought it was kind of catchy. Okay, here's the area that we're developing. You can see it's to the right of Daniel Drive and well to the south of Karen. So what this is used for, unfortunately in our business, a lot of the material is very bulky. Also, some of the lead times are way out. It's a very volatile market, as anyone that's a contractor can tell you. And with a lot of products, we can't just have outside storage. Say if it's a panel product like plywood or OSB, we have to have an area to put it under cover. So this building here, which is closest to Daniel Drive, and something else I'll mention too, when we were first laying it out, we kind of had an area, a working area here, and Sean made the suggestion that why don't you try to encompass the area you're going to be working with, because this way it'll block any activity from the residential area. So we lined it up that way. So this area would be mostly used for panels, so it's not a high activity type of thing. We may only be going in that building once in a while, like when excess material comes in, it'll be a place that we can store it. So it's not like a regular area where they're building loads in this building. Also back here, it's a place where we'll store some long length material, which isn't high velocity items. So there's not a lot of activity going in here. And this building here will be for wood eye joist, which is actually being displaced from here to go into here. So there'll be trailers unloaded in this area, but that's already being used for activity at this point. So this part will be the least amount of regular activity. There won't be trucks going inside this building. It would only be, for forklifts. And again, it's not something where they're building loads from. It's just a case of where they put extra material in. We've had an issue over the last couple of years because of lead times and because of market conditions that we're not as able to purchase as much quantity and have as much product on the ground as we'd like to. And this would really help alleviate it. Also, it'll give us the ability to make some things more efficient and more organized. Like now it seems like that's impossible. I know when we built this, we figured we had all kinds of space, but it seems to get away from you. So I don't know if you have any other questions for me.
Could I just note, if you could just speak briefly, one of the questions in the review letter was, does the extra storage, would it necessarily lead to generate a noticeable increase in truck traffic or not?
No.
Thank you.
Dave?
You there, Dave? Hold on.
Everybody put your hearing aids up.
All set?
All set, go ahead.
All right. I'll go through the specific items that I looked at on the other plan as well and kind of gloss over the stormwater design. I looked at zoning, and from what I can see, it appears that the project complies with all the requirements of the zoning bylaw that's applicable to the site. In terms of parking and circulation, the applicant really knows best as to what they need to access these buildings for the type of vehicles that are going to be using it. So since it wasn't open to the general public, we felt that the circulation was adequate, and note that there was no additional parking required to service these buildings. We didn't anticipate that there would be any significant more activity in terms of customer traffic, but we questioned if the applicant could address whether or not they anticipated there would be additional truck traffic attributable to the proposed storage use on the site. Significant grading is proposed around the building. This site sits in a formerly vegetated area, but it's really sitting in a bowl with slopes coming down to the development site. And we're suggesting that the slopes be stabilized with something other than vegetation, other than grass, to give it some diversity in terms of just having a grass lawn. And we're suggesting that in terms of lighting and landscaping, the lighting plan that they provided documented that there was no spillover effect beyond the site. And in terms of landscaping, besides the revegetation of the slopes, the planning board, as part of their review, really needs to determine if additional landscaping is appropriate to further mitigate any of the impacts, if any, of the project on the abutters. Special permit, as Sean mentioned, is because the project portion of it lies in the floodplain and wetlands protection district. We've determined, based upon the criteria in the zoning bylaw, that the site is not subject to seasonal or periodic flooding. The basis for that, as required by the zoning bylaw, is does the project lie within a special flood hazard area? That's either Zone A or Zone AE on the federal flood insurance maps, and the site does not lie in one of those areas. That the site plan and the information that is required to document the conditions of the special permit have been provided, which they have. And the final requirement is that no waivers of submission requirements should be requested, which they have not. So our recommendation is the submission is generally well prepared, that the board may consider the approval of the project subject to the comments as conditions of approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on the review.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions from the board? Go ahead.
I think I was the only one here not on the board when this project was initially approved. So, I mean, the whole development. So I just have a couple background things just so I understand. The stormwater currently runs off the site and off towards, I guess, more like the 123 area.
Yeah, so for the record, Garrett Horsfall with Kelly Engineering Group. So basically, a majority of this site, there's actually sort of a cutoff swale. A lot of this site drains to the south, away from the residential butters to the north. A lot of it gets picked up in a cutoff swale before it actually gets cut off to here, and it drains down to the wetland system. And the majority of the other portion, which includes a lot of this paved parking area, and a portion of some overland flow through this section of the site, gets collected, in catch basins and drain manholes, and is fed to the existing stormwater management pond, which then outlets to the wetland. So all of this side of the site is called draining to the east in the original stormwater report that was done for this site. It all feeds to the wetland against the town landfill property.
Okay. Why was that area back there kept grassy versus plantings?
So just really, it was a 3-to-1 slope. Really, there's nothing there today besides a bunch of just minor scrub.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can happily put some sort of jute mesh slope stabilization, and we've kept all of the existing vegetation through here as well.
But was there an engineering reason why that's been kept cut low versus trees or letting it grow back up, or?
This used to be a driving range.
Right.
Driving range, so it was cleared when it was purchased.
Yeah.
So there was nothing out there. It actually slopes down towards our property.
Right.
So it's almost not visible from the neighbors up back, because they're on the top of the hill kind of sort of. So no, it's just left in its natural condition.
Okay, all right. So if this goes through, does this direct any additional water into that southern, into the larger wetland area versus how it would normally flow down off to the east right away?
No, we've analyzed, including this additional inflow into the pond, we've routed it through the additional model, which we provided supplemental information to Dave as well about that.
Yeah.
It still shows as basically a reduction, you know, to that point in total, we have a large, I'm just gonna show you real quick, there's a large, you know, subsurface recharge system, you know, for mitigation, for this additional roof and pavement area. All of the roof and pavement is getting routed through the subsurface, you know, recharge system, which provides, you know, peak flow mitigation, to the pond. So all the peaks have been reduced, and we've analyzed, you know, volumetrically wise, flowing through the pond, and, you know, the pond still functions perfectly fine, and there's still a reduction in flow, you know, to the wetland as designed, you know, the grand, you know, master plan.
Okay. So it doesn't enhance the flow into the wet areas during the heavy seasons?
No,
Or a heavy storm?
the peak flows will be reduced, you know, as a result of this project.
All right. One last question is, if I'm standing on the street level, I can kind of, sort of see those back buildings. Is this elevated above those, or are those pretty much on the same level?
So we've done our best to essentially match grade from here. It's maybe a half a foot higher than, just because of the nature of the business, it's all level. Just we want to be very level throughout this whole field.
I just want to make sure we weren't talking a 10, 15-foot elevation or something. Sorry. Okay. Do you do cutting on site, or is it basically all the lumber is hauled in?
We don't actually do milling.
Yeah.
We have a mill shop operation, but it's in, you know, it's nowhere near that. It's down about this level.
Okay.
We may do a little bit of cutting, but nothing, it's not like any type of milling.
Just curious.
We may do some like cross cutting.
Okay.
Except we do have a mill shop, but that's in the main building.
It's not a sawmill. Right, so again, the use itself is not a zoning issue, it's a highway commercial district. I just distributed to the board, while Dave was talking, a copy of the FEMA flood map, just for the record, confirm that where we are proposing this work is not in a FEMA flood zone. So the special permit is to allow us to do work in the local floodplain overlay district, and the site plan review is basically to revise our existing pre-approved site plan. And the board has previously granted the special permit to work in the floodplain, both for the original project and then again for the design center. So this is just following that same permit pattern. Thank you.
On the trash location, is that anything that needs to be taken?
We're not going to generate any more trash unless we don't need another dumpster out back.
And you have a dumpster that's...
And what we do is we have some dumpsters that are portable, so if we find the need for it, you know, because we don't want to be carrying it out any further than we have to, it's possible we may put something back there.
And also, it was unclear whether the buildings are enclosed or whether they're open.
Okay, I can explain that. These two buildings are enclosed. So you can see there's a door here and a door here. And this building is a three-sided shed right here. So it's open in the front and it's just a shed. Just open here and three-sided.
Any other questions? If we, if,
Do you need Dave anymore? Can I let him go?
yeah, Dave, why don't you just hang in there, because you can do whatever you want, but I'll let you listen in. Thank you.
Is that all right?
What was it? What was the comment?
He's just gonna have you hang in there, okay?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm here for the duration of this, on this project.
So,
So, Mr. Chairman?
what, yes.
One thing is, I don't think we ever received an as-built for your second building.
Yes, Liz brought that up. Kelly Engineering's going to do that.
So we have the, survey crew, scheduled to go do the as-built, so we can, officially close that out and, formally close it out with the town.
Okay.
It's-
And you can get your money back.
So, if you wish, we could close the hearing with this letter here and have some votes. It's up to you.
I'll make that motion.
pretty addressed.
Everything's pretty well been addressed.
What's that?
Everything's been pretty well addressed.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion?
Quick question, the abutters were notified, right?
Yes, they were.
Yeah, they were notified for the special permit, not for the site plan, because it's considered minor, but yes, they were notified for this hearing. And if I could, before you take that vote, just for the record, to answer Dave's question about landscaping, we didn't propose any new landscaping because we're not taking away any of the landscape buffer. There would be no benefit for us putting landscaping on the backside of the building, because the whole goal of our design is they can't see the backside of the building.
So
And it
if we
actually,
could have a
the
motion.
The building's help hold the noise.
Yeah.
More
So
than,
the motion on the floor is to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
So moved. On the first, the special permit approval, including environmental impact by the planning board for work in the town floodplain wetlands overlay district. We have a motion for that.
Motion.
Motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Amendment of the existing special permit by the zoning board of appeals, which allowed an increase in total floor area.
What's that?
Need a amendment of the existing special
Right.
permit.
No, that's going to be for the zoning board.
That's for the zoning board.
Oh,
We just
that'll
need,
be.
Yeah.
yeah, that's the
Okay,
Yeah.
then,
site plan approval.
site plan approval by the planning board and relate to the letter of April 29, 21 from Norwood Engineering.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Is that with
Motion
the
made and
exception of the landscaping?
And
That no landscaping is
I don't-
needed?
I think we've addressed zoning, parking, meaning there's no trash disposal, there's no traffic issues. There's some stormwater notes that we have no problem if you want to continue those conditions. Utilities, you just commented there are no additional utilities, so we don't need that in the approval letter. Grading, Dave mentioned that he basically wants those slopes to be stabilized, which we don't have a problem with that. Lighting and landscaping are not issues. We submitted the photometric, and I just mentioned the landscaping, and then the special permit you just voted. So I think it's really, if you approve the site plan, the comments would be those under the stormwater management design and the grading.
So on site plan approval by the planning board with this letter.
As long as Norwood Engineering is happy, I have no problem with the site plan.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Take care, all.
All right.
And I knew Mr. Hurwitz was no longer the owner, but I wanted him to make the public
I
announcement.
understand. Otherwise known as a partner, right?
I like Mr. Kelly's accent. Can you send it to me?
So, on our zoning articles, somewhere in here. To see if the town will vote to amend the town zoning bylaws, section 17524, entitled Special Requirements for Registered Marijuana Dispensaries by deleting the stricken text and inserting the underlined text. Are there any changes or anything someone would like to make?
My understanding is this brings our current bylaw in line with the new state regs from the Cannabis Control Commission.
It does.
Okay. The reason we're doing the medicinal part is because it's outdated at this point, correct? Okay.
And the only thing is, there are a few spaces in there where we have to put in a period of time.
Oh, okay.
For instance, under I, within so many months of surrendering its state-issued license or permits, or within 6 months of ceasing operation, whichever comes first. Is there anything we want to put in there for months? That's on page 3, I guess.
1 second, please.
Please?
1 second.
Sure.
Yeah.
What is that, to surrender they need to surrender their license if they stop the operation?
Yeah, I thought they had to notify us within 24
I
hours.
thought it was within 24 hours, too.
I don't know why it says months, within months.
Do you want me to send it back asking if it can be 24 hours, because that's what it was?
I would like that. I don't know what,
Why don't we just,
Sean, you don't happen to know the answer to
why
that,
don't
do
we
you?
just do it?
Under MTC shall be required to remove all material, plants, equipment, and other paraphernalia within and blank months of surrendering its state-issued license or permits, or within 6 months of ceasing operations, whichever comes first.
Oh, is that if their license gets revoked or if they close operations?
Yeah, I guess that's removal of material and everything else, so I guess they probably need more than the 24 hours.
I would think they would need more than 24 hours, but I'm sure even under state regulations, I don't know the specific regulation, but it wouldn't be allowed to stay in the building for an extended period of time. All of these properties all have very well-secured vault areas.
Yeah.
So it's not something that has to be done in 24 hours, but I'm sure you wouldn't want it to linger. No one would want to have their product there for 30 days. Someone else would sell it somewhere.
But the way it's written, I mean, otherwise, I don't know why it's written this way, but within blank months of surrendering, which is interesting, because that means it's more than 1 month, but it has to be within 6 months of ceasing operations. You want to put 2 months down, just to have something in there? Board members?
Where are you?
I'm on,
Page
it's
3,
like, it's
section
under
I.
I, near the bottom.
Yeah, that's fine.
2 months?
Yep.
So we'll
Can-
put 2 months.
I was just going to suggest, if it says within a certain number of months,
Yeah.
if you were to say, for example, within 3 months, then someone could say, I want it in 2 months. It's within 3 months. Or I guess it's really interpreted to be by 3 months, right?
Yeah, so,
Yeah, so, sorry. I'm shooting off the hip right now.
yeah, well, we'll make it 2 months.
Is there something that's already done? You know what I mean? Something that you can refer to, that somebody else,
This is what town council prepared. I'm assuming they borrowed it from
Somebody
the
else.
state or from somebody else.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Well, it says it has to be done within 6 months, but we can make it more, stipulate it more. I guess that's what this really says.
I can't imagine, like Sean said, they're gonna want it hanging around, they're gonna get rid of it to somebody else, but 2 months is fine with me.
And that only kicks in if they actually surrender their license.
Right.
So you would think that would be a pre-planned event. So they would pre-plan to handle their inventory.
So any other, that's what you wanted to go forward as?
Two.
Motion made.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. And then,
So other than
the other one is going to be article, and we haven't got a number on it yet, but the same thing, C, D, and E of section 175 marijuana overlay district by deleting the stricken text and inserting what we have here. The only thing in there that we need to do is, I think it's on the last page. Marijuana deliveries shall not occur in the town of Abington between the hours of PM and AM. All deliveries will be completed before something PM. What would you like to have put in there?
10 a.m. to
8 AM?
and 10 a.m., yeah.
10 PM to 8 AM?
10 p.m. to 8 a.m.
So
And all deliveries.
marijuana deliveries shall not occur in the town of Abington between, would you make it as late as 10 PM at night? You want delivering?
10 p.m. at night, 8 a.m., and all deliveries shall be completed before 9:30? No, 9:30.
So
No, all deliveries shall be completed before 10 p.m.
you want to make it as late as that? Or would
9.
9 be better?
9. 9.
I would prefer 9.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was just make it 24 hours.
Huh?
I said just make it 24 hours.
And it also begs the question, is that 7 days a week?
Huh?
7 days a week, same hours, or do you differentiate for weekends? I don't, just, I put it out there in case the question comes up. 9 to 9.
Wait a minute, hold on.
It's the last, it's number 7.
I was thinking this is deliveries to the retail facilities.
No,
for
this
sale.
is deliveries to the homeowner. I mean, I can just see someone having a party and saying, we'll get it in by 10 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, 10 o'clock delivery is probably not a great idea.
So have to deliver, so between the hours of 10 p.m. and a.m.
I would say 9 PM.
9 p.m.
Or earlier.
9 p.m. and all deliveries shall be completed by 8 p.m.
By 8,
9 p.m. and 8 a.m. all deliveries shall be completed by,
no deliveries shall occur in the town of Abington between 9 PM and 9 AM.
oh, sure, why not, make it 9.
Let me be a devil's advocate here, just out of curiosity.
ahead.
We now have alcohol delivery. Can that happen at all times of the day?
I have no idea.
I don't know. It's a good question.
I mean, people can order booze and vodka, any amounts,
Really?
11 o'clock at night.
Who made that regulation? The state? It didn't do the.
I don't know
I
if
didn't see
there's
it.
any regulation on that.
Yeah, well, with this, we have an opportunity to put a regulation.
I said, I've never used the service, but is it only from open liquor stores, or could it be from a warehouse?
That I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because if it's a liquor store, then the liquor store has hours of operation.
Yeah.
I never even heard of delivery.
Drizzly.
Right.
There is.
Just sold for $1 gazillion.
Is that to keep people from driving?
See drones carrying bottles of Jack Daniels around.
Well, it exploded when everyone was stuck at home.
So you want to go 999?
Well, let's do 8 a.m. There might be.
It can't be delivered between 9 PM and 8 AM.
Yeah.
Or you just do the store hours. What do the stores got for hours?
Well, like Trucci's.
Most of them don't open till like 10.
Yeah, Trucci's, you can't buy booze before 8 a.m.
What's that?
You can't buy liquor in Trucci's before 8 a.m.
I know
How
most
do you
of the
know?
stores are 10.
Right, right.
But I mean, the store hours would make sense. You're gonna stay open late to deliver?
The only problem with that is, and I agree with the theory, is that now I believe you don't have to have a retail store to deliver.
Yeah, you can come in from any other town you want.
So,
So is 9 PM to 8 AM?
And
Is
then
that-
completed
I'm
by?
fine.
We'll do that next, one thing at a time. 9 to 8.
9 to 8.
All deliveries shall be completed before
What is the difference?
I have no idea. In other words, I don't know why that's there. Marijuana deliveries shall not occur in the town of Abington between 9 PM and 8 AM.
It's almost as if they're implying, as long as the delivery guy leaves the store by 9, he's okay, but as long as he delivers it by 10, theoretically. But you could say 9 and 9, you could just say.
I'd say all deliveries must be completed before 9 PM.
That's fine.
So we got 9, 8, and 9.
Right. Anything else?
I don't know why we're making it
Please?
so late. If that's your reasoning, why 9 o'clock at night, but whatever, that's fine. I'm all for 24 hours.
I was gonna say, why 8 in the morning?
I'm all for 24 hours, so not that I care.
On this, presented at town meeting, all those in favor, make the motion.
Make the motion.
Motion made and seconded somewhere? Seconded?
Yep.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved.
So can I ask, just as moderator, and I'm going to be meeting with the FinCom and the assistant town manager and manager, you just adopted these two bylaws as, in accordance with the amendments suggested by town council?
Right.
And with those edits you just made tonight, okay.
So you can make that reference when you...
And the other ones that, well, Liz and I will go over, I know you approved some other ones at your last meeting, right?
Yeah, you guys didn't have any holdovers from that, right?
What?
That last round that we did?
Seems to me we had something we were going to bring up this month.
I have a draft of
Did you
the-
guys do some at the last meeting that I wasn't at?
They approved all the zoning.
That's what I'm saying. Did you? We did some the meeting before,
Right, but there's a
but you
couple we
brought
were
it up
going to
again
hold off
last
on
meeting, what we had left, I guess is what I'm asking. Plus that petition article for, make the zoning board 5 members.
So that was withdrawn.
That was what?
That was withdrawn by the petitioner.
Oh, it was?
This it was.
Maybe I ought to petition that.
If I may, I have the draft warrant in its current status. So just to review really quickly, there is the updated floodplain and wetlands protection district bylaw, which I don't recall what you guys have approved or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
we did.
FEMA maps and all of
Yeah.
that, yeah, that they
That's
approved that,
done.
yep.
Then the next one in the current draft of the warrant is, I'll try to go through these very quickly. The thing about putting the address on a sign for commercial property.
We approved that.
Yeah. To insert the definition of accessory apartment, see section 17532. Then the question about changing the in-law apartment section to just add the parenthetical phrase, an annual in-law affidavit. Did you approve that or say?
We approved it.
Okay. The next one is for lots transacted by a zoning district line, you move it from 50 to 100 feet.
We approved.
The next one was to get rid of that old note about solid waste facilities in the technology business. I think you approved that. The next one was the penalties for site plan review and changes. I think maybe we made it material changes.
I think we're up in the air on that still, right?
I mean, if the language is approved by town council, I'm all in favor of it.
Right. I think that's what our problem is.
Okay. So we'll follow up with, I'll follow up with Liz about that. At worst, if it gets printed, you guys can always make a motion to pass over if you're not happy with it.
Yeah, I think the rest of them were all approved.
Yep, then, yeah, updating section 32 about multiple buildings being 50 feet away from each other. The one on the Muppet District, which originally had said they had to be 3 acres with 200 feet of frontage unless a special permit was granted by the planning board, and you struck that language, so it remains as now 3 acres with 200 feet of frontage. That's what you approved.
There's a period, 200 feet of frontage period.
Right, that's what will be, that will be put forward in the warrant at town meeting.
Yep,
as
that's the
amended.
copy I have here. You may not have that same copy.
And then there was a proposal, I think Rick had put forth about multifamily housing developments with less than 12 units required a variance in the highway commercial zone. I know there was debate about that, but I honestly don't.
I think we approved it. Did we?
The last meeting, we were gonna kick it to the next meeting, and I wasn't
okay.
there.
I don't think you approved it, but I don't recall.
Yeah, let's assume we didn't approve it.
We didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. What-
So second.
What's that?
We
We
didn't approve it.
did not, I
Did
guess. I
not.
think we may have pushed it to this meeting. I'm not
So
sure.
we're all here, except for Jeff, so.
Yeah, I'm not in with that, if that's what you're asking.
Well, we can check the meeting minutes or the video, but I just, if there was something that was not approved, it won't be on the warrant. Anything that has been approved, we're gonna approve your version of it, right? And then, next article, and we're almost at the end, is to amend the site plan approval, section 175-77C, by adding the structure facing streets language.
That was added,
That
and
was-
there was a little tweak to the language
Yeah.
that got added.
Okay. And then it goes on to the 2 marijuana ones you just did. Okay. We're just trying to tidy up the warrant and want to make sure we're not missing anything or not including anything that shouldn't be on there.
There has been attention on social media about the Peawood District article, just so the board knows.
About the what?
The Peawood article.
The Muppet.
Muppet.
article.
Oh, okay.
Muppet.
Yep.
Some people have mistakenly put the idea out there that this article will allow for a project to go forward, the
warehouses.
Feeney Brothers project to go forward. They think this will allow the project to go forward, and they're planning to come and argue against it. They don't understand what the article is doing, and so, but there's people.
And that article was put in before that particular zoning.
Yeah, so I'm just letting people know that there's among some people, there's a drastic misunderstanding of what's being debated at town meeting.
So the person you're referring to had a conversation with Wayne. He's received copies of materials from the office, and I have told him it was approved. So where he's coming up with this information, I'm not quite sure,
Well, it's
because
approved, it was
it was approved by the
by
planning
us,
board
but
and
zoning.
denied by the zoning board.
Yeah.
If I recall,
And he's received that information.
and there's the implication that I wrote it, which I didn't. If this was part of, when you hired the consultant to review some of your zoning bylaws, he drafted that, and it was postponed, if you recall, from, was it last year's town meeting, because we're,
Maybe the one before that.
yep, you're right.
That go back to Dan Crane?
Yes, Dan Crane. So what that, I believe, is doing, I think the only change it's doing in the Muppet District is reducing the minimum lot size from 10 acres to 3 acres. That's the only change.
Yep, no
Right?
frontage, no nothing else.
And again, the Muppet District is only in the location on the north side of Chestnut Street and west of Hancock Street, and then on Adams Street at the Weymouth Town line on the air-based side.
I've tried to explain spot zoning, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do something specifically for someone, that's illegal as hell.
So do you guys have the information from Eric Carlson about the changes in the new model bylaw for the stormwater management? I think I sent it to everybody.
Oh,
Yep.
that's someplace, yeah.
Is that sufficient for your explanation at town meeting?
Yeah, it'd be nice to have someone write that up for me.
I did,
Oh, good.
and I sent it to you.
Oh, I got it then.
Okay. Stormwater revolving fund, you guys okay with this?
Yes.
Yes.
I spoke with the town manager, and we put in a spending limit up to $50,000 because the best management practices that John Stone has to clean the basins this year, and that cost is $45,000. So if we have
Clean what?
$45,000 to clean the identified stormwater basins.
All of them over town?
Yeah,
All
Or
over
each one?
town.
Yeah.
All over town, yes.
Yeah.
So if we put 50 in here, then he would, if he had to do them all in 1 year, he would have enough money.
But the thing about it is that we need to charge a developer an amount of, what we really need to know from him is how much does it cost to maintain those detention areas every year?
He said it's $1,000 a year, and it would be for 10 years.
But, so,
So we'd ask for $10,000
well.
from the
well-
developer.
Well, you got $10,000 from the developer. That means for 10 years, you'd be able to maintain it. What happens after the 10 years?
That I
So
can't
my
answer.
feeling is that we should get some kind of an amount of money, and I don't know how you work it out, that the money is put in some kind of a trust fund that gets interest, whether they can do it legally or not. Some people say you can, some say you can't. And legally have an interest off that perpetuates the maintenance of that detention area for like
It's gonna be a lot
cemetery
more than
lot.
$10,000.
So I've asked that
It's
question
gonna be
as
a lot more
well.
than 10 grand.
10 grand is not, I mean,
It's nothing.
no,
No,
so
no.
you
So
need
you're
to
gonna
get,
do a subdivision and
so you
they
need to
can
get
put up
something like
200
20
grand?
grand if you got 5% interest to cover the cost.
Yeah, if you got 5% interest.
The problem is municipal accounting doesn't work like that, so you can't put it in a high-interest bearing account because then you wouldn't have access to the money. I went through this with the treasurer. So whatever we're gonna get while it's in a revolving fund, so they can have access to the money as they need it, is what you'll get interest on. It's not a lot of money.
Where's the money come
The developer, it's gonna be $10,000 per basin. Per basin.
from? Is that for any development or?
That's someone puts a detention area on their subdivision.
Yeah.
There's no provisions made to maintain it after that. In some cases, the homeowner owns the detention area and wants someone to come in there. In some cases, we haven't even got a right to go over the property.
Right.
The new MS4 permit is requiring the towns to maintain them.
Every year?
I don't know that it's every year, I'm
I
not
mean,
sure
some-
what the requirement is,
It
but
would
that's
be
why we
cheaper
need.
to maintain it every year before it starts
Right,
growing.
right.
And maintaining is sometimes either mowing or just cleaning the trash out or whatever it is.
Right, right.
But if you let it go too long.
But it's
gonna be more than
labor
mowing.
intensive, right?
We can talk about it more later, but there would be a difference too where, for example, in a subdivision where there's a retention pond and the town gets that road and the easement versus Cape Cod Lumber, who has a retention pond on their private property. That's his responsibility, not the town's, the way I understand it. But we'll cross those bridges and those basins when we get there.
At the end of the day, they have to, under that permit, they have to be maintained. So
Okay.
I think that's the concern, the town doesn't have the funding
Right.
for a labor intensive
And this is
cleaning.
gonna happen in all towns.
Right,
The
right,
Developers
under
are
this
gonna learn this
permit,
pretty quickly.
absolutely.
Yep.
Right,
What was
because
that?
we've already adopted the bylaw, we're working on the rules and
unfunded
regulations, which have to be done by
A couple of them
June.
in there.
Okay.
Street
So-
sweeping and
Have
cleaning
you
of these.
spoken about the floodplain bylaw changes yet tonight?
Yeah, no, we talked about them the last time.
Did you, all right, it was on the agenda, I didn't know. Because you had asked, I think you were asking town council what the difference was from the old version versus the new version, I believe.
No, it was just the highlight, yes, the highlight between the two, and the town manager, Ixnay, town council,
Okay.
that'd be, again, labor intensive and.
Yeah. A lot of it's the same, I went through it a little
Yep,
bit myself.
and I gave them what the differences were, and then Eric Housen, DCR, weighed in on what the differences were, so.
All right, maybe I can talk to you
I
another day, I don't
can-
want to keep you guys here.
Yeah, I can get you that stuff at town meeting.
Yep, great.
So you guys are okay with the stormwater management fund, right?
Right.
Okay. And you're okay with those?
I don't think it should be $10,000, though.
What do you think it should be?
20,000.
All right.
Put it in the price of the house. If the price of the house is today, I guess they can afford it.
Is everybody okay with $20,000?
I don't know, with the price of what it costs you to build a house, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just upgrade the countertops, that'll cover the cost of it.
I don't know if you
I like
guys have
Formica
seen what it
myself.
costs for lumber nowadays, is crazy.
I'm not doing my business this year.
No, I mean.
Yes, the
just-
affordable housing
just not
proposal.
YouTube.
Do you
It's
guys have
crazy.
comments on the affordable housing
Crazy.
proposed?
Is there anything else
Oh.
besides that?
Yeah, there's the intersection improvements, comment on the Hancock Street and Chestnut Street intersection.
Yeah, is there anything we need to know about that? I
Did
mean-
we go over the 40B one yet, or is that?
No, I want to leave the room when you do that, all right?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the improvements, why don't we do the comment on Hancock Street and Chestnut Street improvements? I gave you a copy from Environmental Partners. Yay,
Yes.
Yeah.
happy to hear it, I'm not gonna get hit that corner. Anybody have any comments they want
What's
to
that?
say?
Yeah,
The
according to,
Chestnut Hancock Street intersection.
I know there's a science to it. I think it's the weirdest thing to put a roundabout at the bottom of that Hancock Street hill,
But I'll tell you,
it's beyond me.
Well, that's part of it, is they're
I grew
leveling
up
it.
there, so.
but, I mean, when I go, I don't go that way anymore. I go all the way down and take a left on Chestnut, on Hancock Street, and then take a right. That's what I do, because it's just a dumb, and some of that stuff could be solved by just removing that hedge and moving it back, which I did when the DOT people were there, and obviously they didn't listen to what I had to say. But,
Oh, we
and I
did.
talked to the lady, and she was improved with
We
it. Probably
talked
would have
about this
solved
one.
the problem.
We talked, the point is, I just checked the old council draft, is on their website, and the federal funding for this project isn't gonna be until like 2026. So they bumped David, what's his name, Charlie Kilmer, who's the transportation planning supervisor over there. They explained that John Stone and I talked to him about this, and so 2026, 2027 before you.
And I get the science, and I get it's a dangerous intersection,
So no comments on
and
that?
it will definitely slow people down. No,
My only comment is give particular focus to that Hancock Street approach as they're coming down the hill. How that's gonna work.
I don't even know what,
But you have that problem as it is anyway, because
Yeah.
they still can't stop.
But I think part of the project, I think, is to level that, is to,
I think they're gonna cut it down a
Yeah.
little bit, but not too much.
to get a working roundabout. MassDOT will do this like when they did Chestnut Street, North Quincy Street, which they're working on again. But they, MassDOT puts out the notices as far as 10% design, 20% design, 30% design. We got an Old Colony Joint Transportation Committee meeting Thursday at noon. You can go to the OCPC website, but I'm gonna find out where that thing is as far as design goes. I'm the alternate rep
That's
to
it.
the
You're
JTC,
free
John
to
Stone, and I
go.
represent the JTC.
And I will leave, and you can discuss zero,
We'll do this briefly.
whatever it is. And I'll let you people adjourn the meeting.
All right,
Thank you, Bruce.
good night, Wayne.
Thank you.
see you, Wayne.
All right. Everyone, we've got a couple of things. Bruce Hughes, acting, vice chair, acting in place of Mr. Smith, who's had to recuse himself for this. Guys, we have the things from Mass Housing here, and it's 26 pages here. It's pretty self-explanatory, why they're doing it, what the requirements are. I know that, I checked, the town is at 9.9 affordable housing. I think they need to do like 40 units or something. But anybody can come in anytime, as long as the town hasn't reached the 10%, which is a moving target, as we all know. So, this document from Mass Housing, hold up the TV camera, explains all this. There's gonna be a site visit tomorrow, Liz?
Yes, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
If you have not RSVP'd and you would like to attend, please make sure you contact the town
Yes.
manager's office to
And-
let them know you will be there.
And according to the town manager, Liz, we've gotta get comments to,
The comments need to be to the town manager no later than May 10th, so the Board of Selectmen can vote on them.
So
Well,
this-
get
so-
them all together and send them off to Mass
so this
Housing.
board, whoever, and also the Housing Trust will be asked to make comments on that too. So, we don't have to discuss this in depth unless you guys really wanna talk about this, but it's all
Well, we
here.
need your comments, because
Oh,
we're not meeting
Okay,
again.
yeah, okay, so,
Yeah, until-
what are your comments? Rick?
so one of the guidelines for reviewing these projects is they can't put any conditions that they would not normally put for a market rate traditional development. So what I'd like to do is make notes that the previous development that was going in here had agreed to do a couple of mitigation items. For instance, address the intersections at each end of Summer Street. They were gonna fix the light timing at the top, and they were gonna do some stuff going heading the other way. So making the argument that if this is part of the conditions of the project, this is not something beyond what would normally be asked. This is in fact what the previous people had agreed to do, understanding that there's a traffic problem on Summer Street.
So the three intersections on Summer Street, on 58 and on 139, on 18, excuse me, and in the middle.
Yeah. I want it noted, I think it should be noted that the project had agreed to mitigation for those three intersections, and that it wouldn't be out of the realm of ordinary for them to do the same thing. I'm trying to think if there's any other specific conditions we had discussed before they pulled the
Well, there
plug.
was also the circulation issues, but that had been resolved
Yeah.
with Chief Nuttall as far as the circulation around the building. I remember that was addressed.
I don't know if this building is taller than the other buildings.
It's a whole story taller.
Yeah, and that's where the chief had a problem.
Yep.
Was
We
the
don't
height.
have a ladder truck that high, I think is what
I
he
think
said.
when that all started with the plan board, it was 4 stories, the original.
Yeah.
So that should be noted. The other thing, of course, too, is, as has been noted all tonight, we're on a water hookup thing right now anyway. I know it's 40B, but still that's, if they're not allowing water hookups, that just has to be noted as far as our comments goes. So we've done the intersections on Summer Street, we've done the traffic circulation on the site.
They had agreed to a vegetative buffer between the backyards on Progress and their parking area.
Yeah. Noted that this building is 4 stories, it's higher than the project that was submitted as a market rate development, and that might need to be looked at as far as, concern addressed.
Do you guys have any concerns about the mixed use? Because I know that was a thing that went back and forth at the meetings.
Well, it's gonna be a 40B, I don't think they have to go with mixed use on this thing. So it's gonna be a strictly housing thing. And, that's what we went back and forth. Because under a market rate, in the TOD, they have to do a certain amount of commercial use, but all bets are off as far as the 40B on this thing goes.
Yep, I guess it's just be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's also, Sean, you can explain as I could too, friendly 40B versus a hostile 40B. A friendly 40B is a negotiated 40B agreement between the town. Hostile 40B is, they just say, screw you and just go ahead with the thing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I don't do 40Bs, but I don't.
well, hopefully this will be a friendly 40B.
I've seen examples of friendly 40Bs, and they can be nice and lovely and look good. And then there are antagonistic ones, and they stick out like a sore thumb, and they don't go along very well.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, I think we've only done 2 40Bs. The one was off of Summer Street, it's those apartments that are along the railroad line. And then I did a paper for grad school. There was what's the street that goes out to, anyway, it's I compared, there was a subdivision done in the Busterfields, the same acreage, and then there was one done,
Off of Linwood.
yeah, top of Linwood Street, and that was a 40B, and they put double, you can look this up, but they put about double, they're all single-family houses, but in that same footprint, they put about double the single-family houses on. It doesn't look like, it looks, it doesn't look bad.
There's one on
But
High
actually-
Street, too.
But actually
That
wrote
was
it-
a friendly 40B, the one
That's
off of
friendly.
High Street is
George
a friendly
Gillespie.
40B.
So we've done like 3, but, I did it for grad school. Anyway, got an A. That doesn't mean anything, but it wasn't a horror story. Yeah. So, anything else, guys?
That was the main things for
If you
me.
can think of anything, let me know, because it's sort of make your comment and then forever hold your peace, I guess, is the way it's gonna work. But town manager wants to make sure everybody gets their comments in so the Board of Selectmen can have them.
And to the members of my Affordable Housing Trust listening to this, and you know who you are, Ken Coyle, and all those people, let's get some comments into the town administrator. Anything else? All right, I like this power. All right.
That's awesome. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for watching this. Thank you. Thanks for your time.